Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another Warhammer the Old World Tournament Report, Full Scale 4, featuring the Mighty Dwarves, ready for some red-hot, sizzling, steaming, finger-licking good Dwarven bearded action. 5 games. Using the square-based comp, so of course Dwarven Mountain Holds come in with 2,400 points, and some other armies only get 2,000. There is a tier below the dwarves though, so 2,600 for some of those neglected factions out there. Let's dive in. Oh, we've got some activity in the chat already. We've got Tom in there, says good evening. And we've got, let's just say 33B is in there, who is interested in some dwarven action. Nice. Okay, here we go. There is the army. Ignore those on the left there. Not part of the dwarves, obviously. Now then, what is the thinking here? Well, it's quite similar to what I've been running, with a few interesting changes. You'll see, of course, we've got the 2 characters on shield bearers there. We'll have some nice close-ups of them. So, we've got the Thane BSB on shield bearers, of course, who obviously has the exploding handgun of doom. With, I suppose I should tell you what the runes are in case someone unfamiliar with dwarves wants to recreate any of this stuff. So it's the Master Rune of Bursting Flame, Rune of Rapid Fire, Rune of Accuracy. So 2 shots, they always hit on 3s, and each hit explodes into 2d3 hits. There you go, and it's on a Thane. And since he's the BSB, he also has a banner, which has the Master Rune of Grungni and a Rune of Battle. So 5+ ward save for him and his unit, and +1 to combat res. Then we've got a king on shield bearers who has the Master Rune of Adamant, Rune of Passage, and Rune of Warding. So toughness 10, which some armies struggle to deal with. So there will be occasions maybe where he just runs around on his own. If there's not much to threaten him with particularly high combat resolution, for example, then maybe he'll just pop out on his own and go on a merry adventure. Otherwise he'll just go in a unit and accept challenges from any hideous monsters that would normally just tear through all the dwarves. And good luck dealing with toughness 10. And even in case you've got killing blow, he also has that once per game 2+ ward save to fall back on as well, just in case. Or if he gets accidentally sniped out with a cannonball or something, we don't want him taking a load of wounds from that. And the Rune of Passage just gives him move through cover. So, in case he does want to get into a fight, makes it a bit more likely to happen. Then, you'll see we've also got a couple of other heroes in the middle there. We've got Burlock Daminson to be plopped into one of the ranged units to stop them taking any penalty for shooting at long range, which is good. He also just counts as an engineer. And then we've also got a Runesmith with 1 Rune of Spellbreaking, so 1 auto dispel, once per game. And anytime the enemy is about to launch their major attack, you might want to shut down that 1 spell if they're close enough. So, for example, anything that's going to give them a ward save or give them 1,000,000 extra attacks before they charge you, maybe you want to stop that before they get in. Then, we have got some other characters as well. We've got 2 engineers. Now, you might think, we've already got Burlock, why do we need 2 engineers? Well, first of all, there's some cannons in this list, so we want engineers to hang around with those. But also, you may remember in the past that I've run the 2, well, on this occasion I've got 2, but in the past I've run 1 Stupidity Gun, which is a handgun that has the Rune of... where are they in the list here? So they both have the Rune of Concussive Force. Previously I'd only run 1, so to make sure those guns aren't the same you also have to put another rune on the other, so one of them's got an enchanted rune on there as well. It's just they're not identical items, which of course dwarves would frown upon. So, one's 88 points, one's 93 points, and for that, if they hit the enemy with their handgun, that unit becomes stupid for the turn. Against some armies, that's going to be really good. Against some armies, terrible. When I've run 1 in the past, it didn't really do anything, because when it does hit, on average, most units pass stupidity tests anyway. But with 2, it's either going to be twice as terrible, or good, because we're going to be forcing more enemies to take those tests, and not a lot of armies have ways to mitigate those stupidity tests, except for the armies where everyone's already stupid. So, if we can make some big significant unit take shooting damage and then also make it stupid for the turn so it just has to sit there and absorb more shooting damage later, then that seems like a good idea. Now, paying nearly 200 points for 2 engineers purely to put stupidity onto the enemy probably wouldn't be a great investment, in my opinion, but because there are 2 naked cannons in the list, they will be able to offer the rerolls of the artillery dice to those cannons as well. So, there is a reason for their existence outside of just making people stupid. Then, what else have we got? Here are the 2 cannons. We've got this classic 90s cannon, of course. This is actually the oldest model in the army in terms of when I acquired it. It was when I first dabbled in the dwarves. Must have been maybe 96, possibly, is when I got this exact model. And then this one was much later when I jumped back into the world of Warhammer, which would have been around 2011 or 12. And this is the cannon, I believe, from the Battle for Skull Pass box. And I got a lot of dwarves from that. Then we've got 4 gyrocopters, 2 units of 2 with steam guns to keep them nice and cheap and to deal with those big hordes, which is also why the cannons are in there, by the way. Any big, deep unit of skeletons, for example, that normally you're shooting at them with rangers, for example, and you kill 5. They don't care if they lose 5, because more than that are probably coming back to life each turn anyway. So also with steam guns, with those 4 templates we can potentially drop on them, and 2 cannonballs that can shoot through and kill a load of them at the same time as well. So that's a lot of my thinking with the list building here. Those big unkillable blocks that I'm not going to be able to beat in combat. Particularly Tomb Kings are quite scary at the moment. Then we've got, and also the gyrocopters can go cabbage hunting as well. The baggage trains are not safe from a unit of 2 gyrocopters. We've got Martin in the chat, good evening. We've got 20 dwarf warriors with a rune of battle on their banner, hand weapon and shield, full command, so +1 combat res for them. They may well find themselves with the king on shield bearers in there sometimes to make them a bit more terrifying. You can tell these models are old in terms of when I assembled them, because you can see mold lines still on them. So back in, when were these released? Year 2000. Back at that time, I wasn't as diligent with removing all the mold lines as I am now, so you can see like little bits of where the sprue hasn't been clipped off the end of the hammer still present. Then we've got the Rangers. We've got 20 of those as well, which is the maximum size now, and they've got their usual setup for me, which is shields, great weapons, hand weapons, throwing axes, crossbows, heavy armor, full command, and the rune of courage to stop them running away if they get charged by something. So a good stand and shoot, powerful in combat with their great weapons as well, and also with the changes that were made to infantry, they can hold their own defensively now as well. It's a sad time for Iron Breakers when all the other units can get a save just as good as them in combat now. And there's the 2 characters we mentioned earlier, Burlock and the Runesmith, and then I don't know if there's a close-up of the Iron Drakes, but we saw them in the wide shot. There we go, 18 Iron Drakes with Cinderblast bombs, full command, no torpedo, because it's not very good anymore. So Iron Drakes, terrifying, get them on a hill, anything charges them, you're going to eat that many Drake gunshots and the Cinderblast bombs, you're going to take damage on the way in. Then I've also given them the Master Rune of Hesitation, so you don't get your impact hits or lances or any other rules that you would normally have on the charge when you hit them. You do get your initiative bonus, I haven't got that rune as well, but you don't get any impact hits, which is a big deal. So beating the Iron Drakes in combat is going to be very difficult, because on the way in, you take however much damage from the Drake guns, you then don't get your impact hits, you don't get your lances. They have a decent static combat res if, for example, the BSB is in there, who's also giving them a 5+ ward save, so you probably won't do too much to them either. And you probably lose the combat because of the stand and shoot, and then you bounce off, and then they stand still and shoot you again. That's the plan. But I imagine most people just won't charge them. We've also got 5 Thunderers to fill up the core as well. Nothing exciting in there, just 5 of them. And that is everything. So, let's go into game 1. Drawn battle lines. So we've got this nice diagonal line here. And whenever you're playing this scenario, I always like to ask my opponent if they've got any spells that can make my units fall back in good order or flee. And if the answer is yes, then obviously we don't want to deploy anything at this edge, too close to the table edge down here. And this is the terrain map that we've ended up with hills in the centre. It's not very often people are going to come up against dwarves and allow me to get the card with the optimal hill placement, which is like on the edge of the deployment zone, fully inside it. Often there's a hill kind of just hanging into the zone, so you can't get both ranks on it in the first turn. If it's Iron Drakes, it's not that much of an issue, because, for example, this hill here, they can walk straight onto that turn 1, probably, because they don't care about moving and shooting. And what is this? It is a Troll Horde. Let me crack open this Troll Horde list here, which I have open in another tab. And there we go. So, Troll Horde. That says to me that we're going to have a lot of flammable units, but actually we don't have too many. And it's a good job because my entire army pretty much is going to be flaming against them, because we can get the Runesmith in the Rangers to make all their crossbows flaming attacks. And we've got the Iron Drakes with flaming attacks, and then we've got magical attacks on the BSB's gun as well, which on some of the units they can re-roll their regeneration against non-magical attacks. So often they just won't be getting it because there's a lot of flaming here. So what have we got? We've got a war boss on a wyvern with the trollhide trousers and the effigy of Mork, which is right here. We can approve the colour scheme of that beast there. Penny says, nice to see the metal gyro. Did you work out a way to prevent propeller blades falling off? I did not. I just deal with them. They happen, and usually every other event or so I have to stick one of the propeller blades back on. I'm painting 2 more plastic ones very slowly. So I can either run 6 or I can put that one into retirement so it doesn't break so often. But I just accept its fate. It's broken off so many times that I've even given up painting over the little piece that constantly falls off now, because it's just going to keep happening. It's too fragile. Unless I come up with some advanced technique for holding it in place other than pinning, which is what I've already done, then I don't know. Maybe pinning and like wrapping the pin all the way around the piece, and then, I don't know. There must be a way. Soldering it. Then what else have we got here? We've got an Orc Weird Boy, who is a wizard, who is in this unit here. We've got an Orc Weird Knob, who is also a wizard, level 4. Oh, that might be the level 4, actually. There is a level 1 and a level 4. So, let's see. That might be the level 1, potentially there. That might be the level 4. Then we've also got, let's see, were either of those on a mount, actually? I think both of those are on foot, but then we've got an Orc Weird Knob level 4 on a boar as well, which is going to be this one at the back, which is there, hiding behind the boar boys there. So we've got 3 wizards, so lots of spells here. Then we've got a Troll Hag, which is represented by this Stegodon with an Orc Wizard on top, which is quite funny. Let's see. Hill says, I've gone epoxy for a few models. Yeah, there must be some way. It may be the most fragile connection point because of its metal. I actually wouldn't mind having the fine cast version of that gyrocopter instead of the metal one, as weird as that sounds. As soon as you get that in sunlight, I'm sure those propeller blades will start drooping, but at least they won't fall off like the metal one. If I do ever figure out how to make it stick permanently, I will pass on the knowledge, definitely. But pinning seems like the best choice, and then just deal with the occasional breakage. And usually when it's pinned, it doesn't fall all the way off. Like the super glue join will break, but the pin will kind of remain intact, so it'll just dangle. So it doesn't just fall off and get lost, which is probably better. So we've got lots of wizards. Then we have got, after the Troll Hag, who is also a level 1 wizard, loads of spells here, we've got 2 lots of 20 goblins. And they are armed with, well, one's got short bows, one's got throwing spears. And where's the other one? I think the other one might be, is the other one scouting or ambush, possibly? We've got 2 lots of 20 orcs with throwing spears. Loads of these units have frenzy, by the way. So they're going to be compelled to charge. After deployment, by the way, my opponent realised, wait a minute, there's a unit with stupidity right in the front of one of the fighting units. That's not very good. But I don't think they actually failed and got them stuck there, so it's okay. There are 2 units of 3 stone trolls, one right here in front of the orcs, and the other one is over on this side in front of the other orcs. They have great weapons. We've got 7 boar boys with cavalry spears, and they also have frenzy. And then another 7 boar boys, which are... Let's just get back to the wide shot for a second so we can see everybody. There they are, out on the left there, the other 7. And one of the units has, let's see, the obsidian lodestone and the big red raggedy flag. The other one has an obsidian lodestone and banner of butchery. And then there's a bone grinder giant, which is quite terrifying. If you've ever seen its rules, potentially, if it gets lucky and rolls the right number for its attacks, then it has one particular attack that can be very dangerous to dwarves. Everyone in the fighting rank takes an initiative test or they are removed, which is horrifying. So that's a really big pair of pants he's wearing if he can stuff that many dwarves into it. Bone Grinder Giant. He's 300 points though, and I'm fairly hopeful that I can cannon him to death on the way in and maybe shoot him with the other weapons as well, and hopefully not get stuffed in his pants too much. Okay. I've got 1 cannon on the left flank here, with 2 gyrocopters in front of it, with an engineer. The other cannon is actually without an engineer, which you'll see in a minute. We've got my dwarf warriors with the toughness 10 king in there to accept any enemy challenges. We've got, and also just to spread the power around, so all my blocks, none of them stand out as the weak link. We've got the rangers here with Burlock and the runesmith to give them the extra armor bane and flaming attacks, and no penalties for shooting at long range. Burlock does look massive next to everyone else, but it is mainly because of his enormous backpack with all these tools and accessories in there. He's not like obscenely scaled up compared to the classic dwarves. There is a little bit of scale creep though. We've got the Iron Drakes with the BSB in here, and we've got another engineer there. So the reasoning for the engineer's positioning is not entirely because of the cannons, it's also so I can put them in a spot where they can shoot at units I want to make stupid. So anyone I've identified as not having particularly great leadership, or maybe is not going to be near the enemy general to get their higher leadership, then that's why I've positioned them there. Thunderers just guarding the cabbages on this flank a little bit. Cannon in this corner, so I'm hopeful that the enemies just advance forward, and they're going to have to open their flank to one of the cannons at some point, you would think. So I can maybe kill lots of orcs with a cannonball. And then 2 gyrocopters on this side as well. The enemy cabbage train is actually in the top right from my point of view, so those 2 gyrocopters there are going to get round and try and destroy that. Okay, so I get turn 1. And let's start blasting. Not too much movement. The cannon does, I believe, a wound to the Bone Grinder Giant, which is a reasonable start. You can see the Iron Drakes have moved straight up onto the hill, and wounded the War Boss on the Wyvern as well with my Handgun of Doom there. I don't think the actual Iron Drakes were able to get in range to fire yet. And you can see the gyrocopters sneaking around the side there. They don't want to be charged by anything. If someone wants to turn around and shoot them, there's not really a lot of shooting attacks in this army for the orcs. The goblins have some shooting, but it's only low strength, so I'm not overly concerned about that at this stage. So you can see, inviting them on, we've got the strategic locations down the centre there, and not in our deployment areas, which suggests I'm going to have to walk forwards if I want to score any points. And I'm going around to get the baggage train there, so I'm playing the scenario a bit, and I assume the orcs are going to want to come towards me, because if they don't, they will get shot to smithereens. You can see 2 of the boars have already been shot down by the rangers there, I believe. The other gyrocopters in the top left are just using the vanguard move as well, and they've got all the way to the top there, which wasn't actually that far, because the deployment is that diagonal, as I was saying. So they haven't moved an obscene distance. They're just waiting to see if anyone's going to waste their time turning around to look at them, or if anyone's just going to advance beyond them, I can start getting round the back and looking for rear charges, maybe if we get into combat to help the combat res. So scoring wise, I have this objective, I think, with the Dwarf Warriors, and within 6 inches of that one, too far away from the others. So my opponent started drawing out this, so I decided I'll just take pictures of that instead of marking it with dice this time. Then, what's this? In the next turn, the enemy turn, we've got a Wyvern charging straight into the Iron Drakes already because it has Frenzy. Well, this is going to be interesting. And not in the interesting way that I think the outcome is going to be particularly wild. I think I'm very likely to win the combat because I have to sacrifice the unit champion. I get 2 on the stand and shoot. I'm going to challenge with the unit champion, probably get killed by whichever one of them strikes first, so that it's not going to get the maximum number of attacks. And even if it gets the maximum overkill, I think I may well still win the combat anyway with static res, and then it's going to bounce off me and be standing there for me to shoot again. So I'm not too concerned about it going in on its own while I've got a unit champion. It also has a ward save, so I'm going to be saving some of those wounds, so probably shouldn't suffer the maximum overkill. 2 on the stand and shoot anyway. Everyone else just moves forward. Less terrifying than some armies when they're still quite far away after 1 turn of movement. Some armies, after 1 turn, they're like 2 inches away from you. Especially some of those with the spells that let the units fly an obscene distance turn 1. So, no one else was in charge range yet. And you can see that the bow goblins spin round and shoot at the gyrocopters, but don't accomplish much. Then, look at this for combat res. I only take one wound, which kills the champion. I score 8. So the big static res, because the BSB's in there with the Rune of Battle, and they outnumber with infantry, and they're close order, and they've got a rank, and they've got a banner, and I did some stand and shoot. So, look at that. It's running. The enemy general fleeing. I decide not to pursue it, though. Even though it's a great opportunity to kill the enemy general, I don't want to be that close to the enemy, because then whichever way I turn after that, I'm going to get flanked horribly by something. So I decide I'm not going to risk it, I'm just going to stay here, because the chances of me catching it are very slim as it is. So can you imagine if the Iron Drakes land here? Yes, I may shoot something to death, but immediately after that I'm probably going to get hits from all sides. So I would rather not be standing that far out. So the Orcs have actually moved on to some of the objectives now. They've got core units up to these 2. Turn 2 for me. The Rangers shoot up the Trolls, and the Iron Drakes shoot up the Orcs. Because what happened with the cannons, I believe that one down here couldn't see the giant yet. I tried to hit these, I think, in the flank, this cavalry unit here with my cannon. As I said, I was going to put something into them. And I think I also tried to make them stupid as well with a handgun. So what happened was, let's have a look at the wide shot, because I want to get this angle right. And obviously the cannon isn't pictured in any of them. But I think the way it was lined up, I could potentially hit those because I can target the large target here, and then the cannonball can go through. But I don't think that cannon did anything. I think it may have misfired. And the other units did not focus down this unit here. Because I felt like putting one of these units here into these orcs could potentially whittle it down to 1 orc. So I didn't want to whittle it down that far if the cannonball didn't hit. I didn't think I would kill all of them with one of these units, and didn't want to spend 2 of them on it. If the cannonball had taken out 3, for instance, I would have used 1 unit to finish off the other 2. But I didn't want to leave them alive with just a small amount of models. If they charge in here, I'm probably going to get 4 kills on the stand and shoot with the Iron Drakes, maybe even all of them. So I decided to take the gamble there after the cannon doesn't kill any. And I focused down onto the other units that are going to be more of a threat later. I think it was after I learned that all the cavalry have frenzy that I decided, well, they have to charge me. They can't just camp in front of me and cover the advance of the other units. So if they have to charge me, I might as well save the Iron Drakes for the stand and shoots after the cannon did nothing. Turn 2, and we've got the enemy general is still fleeing. Tom says, do engineers have handguns or crossbows? With the stupidity rune, I think crossbows makes more sense as you only need to hit, and the extra range normally equals an extra turn of shooting. Well, these ones have handguns, and you can tool up crossbows as well. But I typically don't, because I like the idea of engineers. I think they just look more like engineers, if you see what I mean, with the handgun, rather than just putting like a ranger or a quarreler there and claiming they're an engineer. The engineers do usually come equipped with black powder weaponry, the actual models of them. So I think they look more engineery. But I do appreciate that there is a bit of the community that likes the crossbow, particularly the exploding crossbow of doom on the Thane instead of an exploding handgun. I prefer the handgun for the Thane because you've got the guaranteed AP, rather than entirely relying on the armor bane with it. And obviously you're giving up a little bit of extra range. And there are occasions where you want the extra range, so those people that are taking the tooled up crossbow aren't fools. Enemy general fails to rally hilariously and keeps running but doesn't reach the edge. And as predicted, the Iron Drakes kill all of those orcs, the cavalry, with stand and shoot. Every last one of them. The other orc cavalry, with their frenzy, charge into the dwarf warriors with the toughness 10 king with a great weapon, so I don't predict that's going to end well for them either. The stone trolls move up, and I think there was a magic spell maybe to let them move again, to get in position to stare into the flank of the Iron Drakes, which wouldn't be good if they managed to do that. And the other stone trolls looking into this flank, so wherever I go, I'm going to get hit in the flank by something potentially, unless I can kill them all. Then we've got the troll hag and the big blob of orcs, so they're just totally surrounding the Iron Drakes now. So, what do we think is going to happen if they get in? If all 4 of these units successfully charge, that's the kind of thing that could actually defeat the Iron Drakes in combat. It depends how many orcs got killed on the stand and shoot though, because it could be a lot if they all go in. You can see on this side we've got another big unit of orcs and the Bone Grinder Giant, who I failed to do much to with this cannon in the previous turn, so it's still quite healthy, staring down the Rangers, so that's getting scary over there now as well. This is the point of the game where the dwarves feel like they're doing really well, killed a couple of units maybe. The enemy are thinking, this gun line, it's just terrible, how am I supposed to do anything about this? But then suddenly your whole army is right in front of it. And if you do get things into combat, you can potentially get something done. Especially if you get flanks. So my dwarf warriors defeat the orc cavalry and they flee. They do get a few kills, but they're running away. And I think I do try to pursue them, but obviously you can see there, did not catch them. So this unit here could potentially flank charge the Bone Grinder Giant, but I decide that's a terrible idea because my king would be in the fighting rank, and potentially, if he fails an initiative test, he could just die then. So I'm not going to do that. Turn 3 for me, an upside down cannon, and the Iron Drakes. Well, that is one unit of orcs that's heavily whittled down. This time I do get the cannon off into their flank, and the Iron Drakes, and the Rangers. There's lots of upside down pictures here. They're easier to spot when they come in vertical instead of horizontal, because I can just flip them easily. But when scanning through, the upside down ones don't necessarily leap out to my eyeball when I'm looking at the thumbnails. Rangers shoot up the other unit of orcs a bit, but disappointing number of casualties done there, not much at all. We are firing stupidity into some of the units though with the engineers now. And this is a long stream of upside down pictures here. My gyrocopters, you can see they charge at the unit there, the goblins, who fled and I did not catch them. And by the way, don't worry about all those orc boar boys, that is the dead pile, I think, because these gyrocopters charged into the fleeing orc boar boys with the 3 guys left up here, and that's why they fled off the table, because I charged them with the gyros. So that's a really good use for gyrocopters actually. If there's an enemy unit that's fleeing, and they flee on their own turn, meaning it's your turn next, and you've got gyros nearby, charging something that's fleeing with a really fast unit like this is actually a good way to finish them off before they rally. Because dwarves typically struggle to finish off enemy units that are fleeing, and then if they rally near the table edge, the weapons aren't going to be that long range necessarily, and the combat units certainly aren't going to catch them. So chasing down fleeing units with gyrocopters is definitely a bonus to having them in the list. And if we go back a minute, let me just have a look. You can see, I don't think I actually mentioned it earlier, that the gyrocopters moved into contact with the baggage train, and they were able to destroy it shortly after. So enemy baggage train is gone, and these dwarves advance beyond the bone grinder giants. They don't get charged, so I want to protect my king. And also, if you see units spreading out, there's potentially domination scenario scoring as well if you want to be in the different table quarters. So this unit of orcs, it's actually perfect, this, because they're down to about 5 or 6 orcs. And Lecker says, cannonballs stop when they hit large targets. Yes, they do. However, if you can use them to kind of guide the cannonball beyond, I don't think they're blocked if the bounce doesn't travel through them, if you see what I mean. I think if the path of travel starts beyond the large target, then does it continue from that point, or have I got that incorrect? My understanding is that if there's a cannon here and there's a unit I want to hit there, and I guess here, and the ball just lands like 8 inches further forward than my guess, it starts here and can therefore travel to that point now. Is that incorrect? Because I don't think that's actually resulted in me killing any models, thinking that that is the case. Like I says, engineers cannot be equipped with crossbows. Good point. The Thane certainly can. The Thane can have the tooled up crossbows, which people often do. But engineers, then no. Okay, there are certain units in the game that do stop the cannonballs. I can't remember exactly who it is other than large targets, if anyone else. But I think when it does hit them, it will stop. The chat's going mad here, let's have a look. Yeah, so Tom, not only do the engineers just look better with handguns, in my opinion. Yes, that is correct, they're not actually allowed the crossbows in the first place. But you can take a Thane with, for example, a stupidity crossbow if you want. But the engineers tend to be cheaper sources of that. It depends what you're going for on your list. If you're taking a Thane that's filling another purpose, like being the BSB, and then you can put a crossbow on with some of the more interesting runes, perhaps. Because you're still fulfilling a role, so you're getting value out of the Thane, and then just having the cool crossbow on top of that. Tom says, I put a runesmith in that other unit as well for the points, as the extra magic resistance and armor bane is a potent combination with the gun Thane. That is true, but I think the armor bane 4 crossbows are also pretty tasty. And I think the Iron Drakes are already going to be hardy enough because they've got the ward save in there and the Master Rune of Hesitation. So that's usually why I put the Runesmith in with the crossbows, because I like the Armor Bane 4 on those. Especially terrifying to things like Knights. Bretonnian Knights, for example, toughness 3 Knights, where crossbows wound them quite easily, and then the no long range penalty for Burlock, and then any 6s are just going to immediately kill a lot of those things. So, the Dwarfs racking up points on the objectives now, compared to the enemy, except I think, is that actually correct there? Oh yes it is, because that includes the baggage train. Yeah, my opponent has included the baggage train in that. There we go. So, which turn are we on here? Spent too much time reading comments and lose track of which turn we're on now. Disgraceful. So you can see the enemy general fleeing there. And okay, this is what we're waiting for. All these charges. So in the previous turn, I moved my Thunderers up into a position to protect the flank of the Iron Drakes from these trolls here. Like I says, if it's cannonball, hits monstrous creature or a behemoth, the rule is in the rulebook. How to shoot a cannon fire, yes. Indeed. So, the Thunderers are blocking off this bit of the charge, because that would be a little bit dicier, I think, if all 4 of those units had got in. So the Thunderers are just sacrificing themselves to block the flank there. So we're only going to get 3 units in, and you'd expect maybe all the Orcs to die from stand and shoot as well. Over here we've got the Bone Grinder Giant and a bigger unit of Orcs charging into the Rangers, so I'm a bit more concerned about that one. And all the Orcs get killed apart from one of the spellcasters, as expected. So 5 kills from the stand and shoots. That's going to be tough for them to break now, because Trolls, even though they're in the flank, I can't see them accomplishing that much. Their weapon skill isn't good. They don't have that many attacks. The 3 Stone Trolls into the Thunderers I expect to go a little bit better for the Orcs, though. And the Bone Grinder Giant. Okay, this is where I find out the true power of the Bone Grinder, because it's going to roll and find out whether it has to make my entire fighting rank take an initiative test. Which potentially, someone in the chat, what do you think about this? Is the fighting rank in this situation my entire unit? Or is it just the front rank? Because these guys are technically fighting, but they're making supporting attacks. So are they not in the fighting rank and it's just the front rank? That's my suspicion right now. We have got a bit of a vortex down there, and the vortex has been put behind the Troll Hag. Now, the reason for that is that the Troll Hag is unbreakable. Therefore, the Troll Hag is not going to be able to ever flee. It's only going to be able to give ground, and you can't give ground into terrain. So the fact that the Troll Hag is touching this vortex, which is a piece of impassable terrain, means the Troll Hag is now trapped in combat forever. Which seems like a very odd rules situation. But apparently, that's how it works. Now, I don't know whether if you have to give ground and you can't physically move anywhere, that... I haven't checked whether you should just remain deadlocked in combat. I suspect that is correct, but you would think there should be something in there where you can like nudge them a couple of millimeters apart to show that they're not in combat anymore. You would think that would make sense, but I believe this is correct. Hill says the entire unit from painful experience. Yes, that's how we played it. The entire unit technically in the fighting rank because they're all able to fight. So if it rolls the right number on its attack chart, we're going to need to take initiative tests for all these rangers. So let's see what happens anyway. The gyrocopters don't accomplish much over here. I think the Orc General continues to flee, by the way. 4 Thunderers get killed by the Trolls, but one of them survives and does not flee. The Rangers, well, they lose from those initiative tests about 3/4 of the entire unit. Wow, wow, wow. And then the ones that remain are no match for the rest of these Orcs. And that's the whole unit gone. So I believe it was down to these 5 after the initiative tests. So all of those got killed, failing their initiative test. Oh dear. And having a ward save wouldn't have even helped because it just says removed from play as well. So that's a bit of a disaster. Bone Grinder, very dangerous to dwarves. We are learning now. Over here, well, this doesn't look great for somebody because the Iron Drakes have won combat. However, the Troll Hag is, of course, stuck there. You can see we actually both did quite high scoring in that combat. But one of the Trolls is dead. The other one bounces off. The Troll Hag stuck by the Vortex and trapped in combat with the Iron Drakes, who have lost about half the unit, though. Okay. I'm in the lead on the objectives anyway. So, into my turn, and the Vortex moves, which is great because it means I can win the combat against the Troll Hag. and the troll hag can now give ground because there's no vortex right behind it. This was a really bizarre situation though, because we've had the good and the bad of the fun rules writing in the old world. We've seen the Bone Grinder Giant kill a huge amount of Dwarf Rangers by making them fail initiative tests because of a random roll on a table, and then the Troll Hag got a random roll on a table, but was in a challenge with my BSB, I think, and the roll on the table meant that the Troll Hag just places a template in the middle of the enemy unit, and that doesn't technically reach the character that was in the challenge, so the Troll Hag could just do nothing in the challenge and just loses the combat. And that is really dumb. Tom says engineers are allowed crossbows. You know what? To settle this once and for all, I'm just going to go and have a look right now whether engineers can have crossbows, because I've never given one to an engineer. So, let's just have a look, because this is a fierce debate raging in the chat now. Let's see. I do not see an option for a crossbow on an engineer. So it depends where you're seeing this. I'm looking on the... Where am I looking? I'm looking on new recruit on the list building there. And I do not see crossbow as an option. There's an option for a Thane, of course, but I don't see it for an engineer. You can give an engineer, according to this, pistol, brace of pistols, great weapon, or handgun. Okay. Where were we? So, defeated the Troll Hag in combat because of that ridiculous rule that the random table means a template is placed and it's not touching the person who's in the challenge, so you just can't do anything. Ridiculous rule. At the very least, it should just centre on the person in the challenge with you, if you're not allowed to hurt anyone else. You'd be able to affect the character that you're in a challenge with. So, Troll Hag, terrible in challenges, apparently. You can see that the stone trolls overrun past the Thunderer after murdering it and are now eyeing up my baggage train, unfortunately. The gyrocopters, well, you may well have noticed that the enemy general on the Wyvern has disappeared. Gyrocopters charged, killed it. It didn't escape from them, because it was already fleeing after it kept failing to rally. Lekka says, the cannon fire, I guess how you want to game the rules, you could hit over a large target, but FAQ says you cannot hit enemies behind a hill. So it would also mean you cannot hit enemies behind a large target. I think hills, specifically, have been FAQ'd differently to the way all of the terrain and other things works. I don't know if we can extrapolate the FAQ from the hill into other instances, because you can technically hit things you can't see, you just can't target things you can't see. So for example, shooting over this line of iron drakes, if you target that spot there, it's legal because you can't actually hit your own guy, because it's going to go at least 2 more inches before it starts, so it's going to start there and then could bounce onward. So I think that's always been allowed technically in the rules, though probably shouldn't be, and it is dumb. I agree these things are dumb, but I think it is how they work at the moment. We've got orcs who annihilated the rangers, now turning their attention to the iron drakes, and if I lose these iron drakes, it's looking a bit dicey suddenly. The king and the dwarves will not be too interested in this bone grinder who's looking right behind them. They want to get away from this because they've seen what happened to the rangers down there and they don't want any piece of that. Turn 5 for me. My king gets out the unit and runs away because he doesn't want to die from an initiative test, so not being very brave there, but maybe sensible. The dwarf warriors turn round to face the bone grinder, and I've put the 2 gyrocopters behind. So they're cheaper, and if the dwarves have to fall back, perhaps, then they'll just end up behind the gyrocopters, who can then absorb the pain for a turn, and there's not many turns left. We've got cannons and engineers firing out. I think they just kill the bone grinder anyway. I think it was pretty close. It was getting close. I had a few cannon shots on it and finished it off this time. I think it was down to its last 3 wounds, and I did finally roll a 3 and finish it off, I believe. We've got gyrocopters charging in after enemy wizards who flee, and takes a perils test because it does pass across my engineer. And suddenly the giant's gone, lots of things are gone, the enemy general's gone, most of the enemy are now destroyed. I've only lost the rangers and a couple of characters. So it's looking pretty good, and I've got a lot of stuff trained on this orc unit as well. In the enemy turn, we've got the troll hag into the iron drakes, and because the engineer is here, these orcs can't charge the iron drakes. They have to charge the engineer and then try and overrun, which they do, but they can't overrun far enough to reach the iron drakes. You can see the engineer ran away from them, which allowed them to continue their charge, but they didn't quite make it there, I think. And then the iron drakes in combat with the troll hag, and she bounces off again. You can see there's a vortex there. The vortex was supposed to be cast this turn behind the troll hag again to keep the combat going, but there was actually no space there because the orcs continued their pursuit there and blocked the space, unfortunately for the orcs. Turn 5 for the orcs, and scoring still heavily in the dwarves' favour. And then on to my turn 6. Lots of shooting going on, and there's no more troll hag. Cannons, iron drakes, just obliterating, and you can see the gyrocopters landing behind the orc boys here, flaming them, killing a few. The trolls keep failing stupidity tests because they're out of range of any extra leadership or any rerolls on stupidity spells, so that's why they've been stuck down here for the last few turns, because they failed to restrain and overran after killing the final Thunderer, and at that point they were too far away from anyone to help them from failing their stupidity tests. And the orc turn, the remaining few orcs charge into the iron drakes. They take 4 on the stand and shoot, and they end up running away. So I don't catch them because obviously they've gone through the gyrocopters and not going to be able to get to them, but most of them are dead, so I'm going to score some points there. And that is the end of the game. So killed nearly all the orcs. Not too many dwarves died, apart from all the rangers to that horrible bone grinder. So that is actually a 20-0 win for the dwarves. So a great way to start the event there. You have to feel a little bit bad for anyone bringing Troll Horde with 3 flammable units against my entire army of flaming attacks, and 2 stupidity guns to make even more of the army stupid. So it felt like the perfect matchup for me. Into round 2, Upon the Field of Glory. So you can see here we do have hills in the deployment zone, so maybe my opponent wanted that as well. On this one, we've got baggage train, special features, and domination. And it's against Cathay. Let me pull up this list momentarily. Okay, so Cathay are obviously going to get less points than me, so there's not much stuff on the table. We have got... Let's have a look at some of the characters here. We've got 2 Shugengan characters. One of them is the general. That one is... Let's see how many points here. One of them is 354 points, one of them is 384. They are both wizards. One level 3, which is the general. The other one is level 4, which is the more expensive one. And they have Great Spirit Longmas, Law of Yang on the level 3, and Illusion on the level 4. So pretty scary, flying little mini dragons. I believe the silver one has the triple save, and the golden one has the double save, I think. And I think this one is the general, the silver one, which has... Let me see, it's the one with the jade... Is it a jade cloak, maybe? Let's have a look. Jade blade, there you go. So there's some kind of jade in there. So, pretty scary beasties there. We have got some cavalry. I think we've got 2 units of cavalry, have we? Because if we go to the... Let's go back to the wide shot again. Maybe it's just the 1. Yeah, we've got 1 who are hanging out in ambush. 1 unit of 8 Jade Lancers. Then on the table, the infantry, we have got 23 Jade Warriors. And we've also got 22 Jade Warriors. So one of them has the War Banner, one of them has the Jade Banner. We've then got 3 cannons, 3 Grand Cathayan cannons with Ogre loaders. So, in a straight-up war machine battle, most cannons obliterate the Dwarven ones. However, if things start going wrong and you're rolling misfires a lot, then that's when the Dwarven ones suddenly become more effective. However, Cathay do have the Ogre loaders that allow you to have 1 reroll, but it's only per game. You either have a reroll or you can fire twice. You can't just be doing that every turn like a Dwarf Engineer. So if it all goes smoothly, they should win in a cannon off. If it doesn't go smoothly and you're rolling a lot of misfires, the Dwarven ones suddenly get the advantage. But you can see I'm obviously not confident because I've deployed my Dwarf cannons behind this forest so they can't be shot by the Cathay cannons at all. We don't want that. We don't want both my cannons just dead in turn 1 because they are the perfect target for the Cathay cannons. On average, they take 1 shot to kill me, and on average, it takes me 2 shots to kill them. So why get into that fight when I don't have to? So deploying behind the woods. I've got my BSB with the Ward Save banner in the Dwarf Warriors because there's these 2 flying characters that could potentially go into something together. And I think with that level of attacks from 2, I can only challenge 1 of them. I think they could beat a naked block of Dwarf Warriors then, 2 of them together. So we don't want any of my units to be too vulnerable. So I've put the BSB in this unit, so they're going to have some stand and shoot, and they're going to have better combat res and the ward save. The Rangers have got the Runesmith and Burlock again, and they're on this hill, so all of them are going to be able to shoot out at the dragons. And the Iron Drakes have got the Toughness 10 King in there. Because I'm thinking, potentially, with the manoeuvrability of Cathay, we've got ambushes as well. There may well be a point where the enemy managed to get around the flank of the Iron Drakes, deny the stand and shoot, deny the Master Rune of Hesitation, maybe get behind them. So I want the Toughness 10 King in there just to issue challenges to anything like this, any horrible characters that get in there. That's the thinking behind my character placement. Got my baggage train behind the Iron Drakes. That's usually somewhere people don't want to go, is through the Iron Drakes. So if they want the points, they'll have to go that way. The enemy baggage train is in the middle, so I've got 1 unit of gyrocopters on each side. We're going to go down the sides and not try and block up the enemy, just go straight for that cabbage probably, or go cannon hunting. We will have to deal with Ogre loaders though, so it's not as easy as with other armies. Let's see. Lekka says, Troll Hag could have used her normal attacks in a challenge. Random attacks are not mandatory on a Troll Hag, unlike a Giant. Well, that will be good information for my opponent from that game, if he wasn't aware of that. Because that would be a very handy thing to do in a challenge, if your random attacks are so bizarre like that one. We've got Wraith in the chat now. Good evening. Tom says, yep, must have been thinking of a Thane with a crossbow. Yeah, Thanes with crossbows can definitely be tooled up, so you can take a Thane with a long-range shooting weapon that's got all kinds of cool upgrades on it. So there is, in my mind, a theoretical list that contains Thanes with all kinds of cool weapons. Problem is they get very expensive for what they do. They sound good on paper, some of the runes you can take, but if that's their only job, I don't really think it's worth it. There's things like the monster slaying rune you can put on guns that does extra damage or always wounds behemoths, I think it is, on 3+. But I don't know if they're really worth it. The amount of times that you don't get to do something like that because they don't go near you or in your line of sight or something. So you can kind of use it if the enemy's that scared of it, if they're scared of taking more than a single wound from a gun, and they don't think they'll stop it with their triple save. But I think that's rare, that instance. So, let's go and get some cabbages and kill some Cathay. Into turn 1. For me, we've got gyrocopters immediately up alongside the enemy, ready to scorch them with fire. The other gyros up into the other corner, outside of charge arcs. The Thunderers just edge up a little bit so they can shoot, and they actually do some damage to one of the Shigengan lords, which is hilarious, because they were hitting on 6s from moving. The Rangers from the hill whittle down the enemy infantry. The Iron Drakes can't shoot yet because the enemy aren't close enough, and I don't want to move them forwards yet. I don't want to expose too much, because I know the enemy is going to come towards me, because those 3 cannons aren't going to kill enough dwarves, probably. So they want to get in here with the flying stuff, I imagine. So we've scored 1 objective each so far. Turn 1 for the enemy. Both the Shigengans end up in the terrain, so it's going to be more difficult to shoot them, with many of my units, not all of them. And the infantry have drilled their way into marching column, I think, and moved on to this objective. One of the Thunderers is shot down by this character. We've got a vortex that's going to block line of sight here as well. May well be Crystal Column. And the other enemy infantry unit is hiding behind it as well, because they want to take less damage from shooting, which is reasonable. One of the cannons turns around and blasts into the gyrocopter. Now, when I saw the cannons lined up on the hill, like, let me find a picture of it, like this, I thought, are some of them too close together? Are they going to be able to turn round? But my understanding is that cannons don't have to actually turn round to shoot because they're skirmishers. So you don't have to actually turn them all around. That's just a visual representation of where they're actually shooting. My understanding is that you can just leave them in place and they can just shoot off wherever they want. So we've got this big open area in the middle now that the enemy has vacated because they don't like getting shot, which is reasonable behaviour. Cannons take down a gyrocopter from that unit as well. So because we've lost a copter from both units, I can now no longer interfere with the baggage train, which is very sad, because their unit strength is no longer high enough. Turn 2 for me. My cannons open fire into the enemy, and the Thunderers and the Rangers open fire, and we've got this character down to 3 wounds now. So suddenly, that's very dangerous. Anything you're going to charge with only 3 wounds, that's pretty scary, with the stand and shoot potential coming up. I do a bit of flaming with the gyrocopter here. The other one is going around trying to maybe charge a cannon next time. So not much accomplished apart from those wounds there. Let's see. Like I says, would it have been a nice try to shoot a cannon with the Thane and Rangers to fish for some 6s to win? They only have 3 wounds and no saves. Yes, that is often something I do, actually. Quite often, in fact. So, against, for example, Empire, where they have to put their volley guns quite close to you to actually hit you, then the Rangers are perfect for those if you've got a massive unit of them on a hill, because you can get a lot of shots into them. So I can't remember if I actually targeted the Rangers into them in this game, or whether I was so concerned, because the cannons here, they're going to kill gyrocopters, but they're not going to scratch these units, really. They might kill 1 or 2 guys a turn, at most. So I'm not overly concerned about killing 1 cannon, whereas I am concerned about whittling down and trying to do a couple of more wounds onto these to make them less combat monsters. But in general, yes, it is always worth, if you've got no other target, why not just shoot a cannon with the crossbows? You can see that we've got some charges going in. 2 on the stand and shoot from the Handgun of Doom. This one is charging into the Thunderers. And they're not going for the Iron Drakes or the Rangers, which is wise of them. The wounded one into the Thunderers. They're going to look to try and get round the flank. And this infantry unit are just camping the objective now and hiding behind the woods wisely. The other gyrocopter gets shot down as well, possibly with a grape shot, and then the other one also gets shot. So all the gyrocopters are dead, as you'd expect when there's no other juicy targets for the enemy cannons. So I'll see if I can win some combat. All the Thunderers get eaten. And then in the other combat, the Shigengen actually loses, and you can see is running away. But I do not catch it, unfortunately. I'm not too concerned about being charged by this thing in the flank, so I've got decent combat res in that unit. So this quite often happens when you've got a big combat res heavy block that only gets hit by one monster at a time. You get into a challenge, and are they really going to stack up that many wounds compared to what I'm bringing here? This unit has 2 runes of battle in it, so probably not. Turn 3 for me. The Iron Drakes manoeuvre a little bit so they can shoot that unit with a few of them. Do a little bit of damage there. The Dwarf Warriors turn round to face this Shugengen, and I fire everything I've got, all the crossbows from the hill. Or did I use the crossbows, or did I get close enough to use the throwing axes? Because if you're spinning the Rangers round, obviously they're going to be -2 to hit with the crossbows because they're ponderous. So if you can get close enough when you have to spin round, then you should use the throwing axes. The Handgun of Doom fires as well, and I've got it down to 2 wounds now. The sad thing about 2 wounds is that you need to get it down to 1 wound to score any points, because you need to get it down to 25%, and it starts with 7. 2 cannons open fire into what they can see, which is this unit of infantry, and we've done some decent damage to them now. You can see firing through there. So it's not gone too terribly yet. The enemy ambushers haven't come in yet though. Turn 3 for the enemy. So, Glittering Robe has been cast, which I think was failed a couple of times on the Shigengens, but this time it goes off. So that makes it harder to hit with shooting, except for the Handgun of Doom, obviously, who doesn't care about such nonsense, and cannons. And then you can see Miasmic Mirage has been cast onto the Rangers, so they're suffering negative modifiers to movement. Cannon shells have been going off next to them, which modify their movement as well, so they're very, very slow at the moment. Thankfully they're open order, so they do get to do a little bit of a pivot at the end of their move anyway. You can see the enemy Shugengen has rallied now, after embarrassingly fleeing. The cavalry have popped in now, which I don't actually mind them popping in here, because I'm going to turn around and fire 2 grape shots into them with the cannons, and maybe make them stupid with these engineers as well. So I don't mind them so much appearing there. And then the enemy cannons fire, take out a couple of Iron Drakes, but not too much. Stu says, not had the pleasure of playing against Cathay, but they seem spicy. They are quite spicy, that's why in the square-based pack they only get 2,000 points and dwarves get 2,400. And they've also limited the number of balloons. My opponent in this game actually came all the way over from America, so did not have any balloons, because they would have been very difficult to transport, so I can understand that. Having taken a metal gyrocopter on a plane before, I don't even want to imagine taking those gigantic Cathay balloons on a plane. That sounds like an actual nightmare. So lost a few Iron Drakes to a cannon, but nothing too concerning at this stage. And the Rangers are quite safe, even though they've got their flank turned to a cannon. Because they're on a hill, as soon as a cannonball touches a hill, it stops. So they are actually weirdly safe in that position. Turn 4 for me. Cannons spin round. Don't do a whole lot though. I think I kill like 1 of these cavalry. And I might have made them stupid as well, potentially, so they will have to take that test if they want to charge anyone next time. Handgun of Doom into the Shigengen. And the crossbows as well, but you can see I don't do anything to it. So all my crossbows and the Handgun of Doom, it just makes its ward saves. And into the next turn, so yeah, you can see the stupidity token. I'm using the skull to represent it here. And then in the enemy turn, this one, which is the wounded one, flies over behind my lines to try and avoid being killed hideously. Cannons fire again, kill some more Iron Drakes. And they really just want to whittle them down so they get some points maybe at the end of the game if they can get the unit low enough. And, hold on, in fact, the one that's taken the damage has gone the other way. This one has gone, wait a minute. I think that hid previously. Yeah, this is the wounded one that ran off into the woods, and this is the healthy one now. So I was able to get my Handgun of Doom to just about see it through there, and didn't manage to do anything to it. And then all the shooting off the hill down into it also didn't damage it either. So this is the healthy one that's landed behind me, which was here. And the wounded one has now exited the woods and is hiding behind the woods. So I may well not be able to whittle that down any further. So it kind of is reminiscent of early Old World, where you would have a big, horrible dragon with a triple save. It would kill half your army. You'd work really hard to get it down to 1 wound, and then it would hide and you'd get no points for it. Now you have to get it down to 25% of its wounds to get points. So something with 7 wounds is actually pretty strong, because you have to get it down to its final wound. So it's pretty unlikely. It's like when you have a unit of 3, for example. That's quite a strong number, because you have to wipe out the entire unit to score any points for it. Because if you just get it down to 1 model, that's not 25%. So units of 3 and 7 wounds, quite good numbers to have. Obviously it'd be better to have more models and more wounds in terms of the unit being more powerful, but in terms of efficiency for points denial, then those are kind of sweet spots right now. So, what's this? The enemy cavalry fail their stupidity test and have to stand still. Isn't that a shame? I get to shoot them again, but don't do much, sadly. The Iron Drakes spin round and shoot the other Shigengan, and the Rangers spin round and I believe use their throwing axes because they're close enough, and all that combined, the entire shooting might of my army do a single wound. Handgun of Doom is able to see some of this unit and kill some of them. You can see that there was a second rank at one point, so that's how he was able to see them. So it's fairly close, but I'm not finishing off units here. I'm not losing a lot of stuff either, though. Turn 5 for the enemy. And now we've got the cavalry into the cannons, so this is where they're going to start picking up points now. We've also got a Shigengan into an engineer. And then it kills one, I think, and overruns into the next engineer. And I think I had the opportunity to dive out the way with evade, but I think I just failed the initiative test, I believe, is what happened there. But I think the 2 engineers were kind of lined up from that angle. Let's have a look. Yeah, they were. So unless the other one's like fleeing up there, which it isn't. So the cavalry don't actually wipe out the cannon. They get it down to 1, it falls back or gives ground, and then they crash into the next cannon. So this cannon can actually shoot next turn now. So I'm actually going to have one more shot at this bad boy up here, who's on 2 wounds with this cannon. Look at that. However, it doesn't work out that way. And then in combat, the cavalry overrun into this cannon. Because obviously I wasn't able to do anything there. Ward saves are the bane of a cannon's life. And you can see crunching in, trying to finish off this cannon now, double charging it just to make sure. And turn 6, over. So I've only lost the cheap units. I haven't lost any of my important characters or any of my big units here, but it's still a very narrow loss for the dwarves, because I wasn't really able to finish off much at all. Did I even kill a whole unit? I don't think so. I did plenty of damage to this unit and to this hero, but just couldn't finish anything off, sadly, and then it was able to escape. So with some good luck on the shooting and some bad luck on the saves, we could have been looking at this thing dead and potentially a draw. There wasn't a huge amount of carnage here. I don't think the Cathay list was particularly tooled up to deal with these units. I don't think their combat prowess was enough to really crunch in there and smash into either of these 2 big shooting blocks, or probably the dwarf warriors, as we saw when one of them went in there and just bounced off and lost. So pretty close, but in the end, Cathay get the win. Into the next round. A chance encounter. So this is where you have opposite you either deploy in the blues or in the reds. And this is the map that we ended up with hills in the middle. There is one card that has buildings in the middle there, and because there's a special feature in the middle, you can actually end up with a big impassable area that only has tiny little strips of land for little characters to run through. But in order for that to come up, both players actively have to want that, because either one of you can just stop that card being used at any point. Whoever loses the roll-off can choose to remove that one immediately, and the player who wins can choose not to use that one if it's one of the two remaining. So you both have to want it for it to be there. So you can't just end up with a big impassable wall that both of you think is rubbish, unless you do it on purpose. There's only one of the cards. So we've got hills there. And we're against, let me pull this up because I don't know if it's a sub-faction that I've played against before. Let me find this one. Okay, so it is the Thracian Warhost, which is a sub-faction of High Elves that get some trees. Very exciting. So there are lots of chariots in this list. And this is one of those occasions where my opponent, looking at the lists and hearing about my list, was utterly convinced that he was going to get absolutely obliterated by this devastating gun line. And I always tell people, the dwarves always sound really scary because you hear about all these shots they have. But then the win rate of the dwarves isn't particularly good. They can't play scenarios that well. They've never been dominating the scene. And once you get into them, you can start crunching through them. And anything that isn't in a big scary block is very squishy. Like a cannon, gyrocopters, if you can get the right things into them, then you can kill them quite handily. Now you can see that we've deployed in the squares here. And I've got my rangers outside of the square, deploying on this side, with a couple of characters ready to charge in there in turn 1. And the enemy have got a line of individual chariots. So, what is in the enemy list? Let's have a look. We have got Corhill Lionmane, who is on one of these chariots. It may well be the one with... Is there one with an axe, possibly? There's 5 chariots anyway, and many of them are slightly different, and I can't necessarily remember because they all look pretty much the same to me. But there's Corhill Lionmane, there's an Archmage on foot, there's a Thracian Chieftain, which is fun to say, and that is the BSB on foot, who is in this unit here. There is a Prince on a... Is this one on? This one is on a Lion Chariot. And then core units, there's 13 Woodsmen, 22 White Lions, 10 Elven Spearmen, which are up at the top there with the baggage train guarding that. And then special units, there are 3 basic chariots. So there are 2 characters on chariots and 3 just normal chariots, 125 points each for those. So, let's go back to the wide shot for a second. What is my plan? The reason I've got the Rangers out here is because I feel like this area is fairly open. If I put them on this side, the enemy just hide behind the 2 lots of trees and never emerge because they don't want to be shot to death. So I've got the Iron Drakes on the hill, so they're going to have some good vantage points to shoot either through there or across this way. And also, the Rangers being here means that they've got this big open area, so any enemy units there are potential fair game for shooting, and they may well want to charge the Rangers. There's no way they would charge if it was the Iron Drakes there, because those are just too lethal to chariots. Denying all the impact hits and the stand and shoot would be horrific for the chariots, so there's no way they would even engage if I put the Iron Drakes here. That's why I can't even scout the Iron Drakes here to begin with, but if I moved them to this sort of area early in the game, I mean. And we've got the cannons down here, so they'll actually be able to draw some lines of sight. There's also a slight line of sight along the side of this special feature in the middle as well. You can't really see it from here because it actually pokes out slightly beyond its base, but there is actually a line of sight down that side. So if anything wants to park here, potentially could get cannoned. Gyrocopters are going to go and try and get the baggage train at the top there. It's a very swirly baggage train, this one. So, how have I got my characters laid out? I've got the toughness 10 king in with the warriors because they're actually going to advance forward and try and hold the special feature. So they're going to try and get like into the woods maybe, or just hold this general area and hold that. And the Iron Drakes have got the BSB in there, so I've got all my move and shoot units all in one blob. And the reason he's in there as well is because I'm going to be shooting down narrow firing lanes quite a bit, so there's going to be cover, and he obviously doesn't care about that. The Rangers have got a nice open field to shoot at, so they don't need that benefit as well, so they're just going to not suffer long range and have armor bane and try and bring down one chariot per turn is the goal for them. And let's go into, look at that lovely over the shoulder of the Iron Drakes. Turn 1 for me. So do some shooting, get one of the chariots down to 1 wound and put stupidity onto this one, which I think is the enemy general, with one of the engineer handguns. The Thane with his handgun of doom manages to do some damage as well. I think he kills maybe an entire rank of those white lions, so they're petrified now. And the elf player here, if he was thinking that the dwarf gun line was dangerous before, probably doubly so now. There's some good damage done there. Nothing killed though. I've put the gyrocopters into a position where they cannot be hit by the chariot here. However, I then realised that this unit here, which are the woodsmen, actually have great weapons, which I'm sure my opponent did mention. But just looking at them, being skirmishers with bows, you think, oh, they're just going to be kind of wimpy elves with a bow. But they do actually have great weapons, so they are actually very scary for a gyrocopter. So you don't really want to be around them. So I decided to flee from them, flee 4 inches. The woodsmen roll a double 6 and catch them, and the gyrocopters are dead. Wow, wow, wow. We've got Runar in the chat. These kind of bat raps are really good. Nice to catch alive. Thank you for your eyeballs and your ears. You've joined in at a very embarrassing time for the gyrocopter engineers, as they obviously did not build in their flee thruster sufficiently, or the fleeing runes that they put onto those propeller blades malfunctioned, and they just die. So I was thinking that that unit just wasn't a threat. And when I decided they were a threat and decided that I was going to flee, obviously the memo didn't quite make it to the copters in time. And I think that's what it was. They were looking at them thinking, yeah, they're just elves. They're in skirmish formation. They must be wimps. And then as they started getting ready to charge, they thought, actually, they've got gigantic axes. We should probably flee. And they panic, like reverse into each other, and they get cut down by the elves. And because of that, the elves are actually in a quite a scary position looking into the flank of my rangers now as well. We've got a few chariots moving forward. They're kind of dilly-dallying the chariots because they're not sure exactly where they want to be. They don't want to get charged by rangers, so they don't really want to get in range of that. And after a while, they decide, actually, yeah, let's just put them all in front of you. You can't kill all of us. Some things are going to get in, which is valid. The white lions rotate, and I think they've got a chariot in front of them as well. And the other woodsmen are up there. So this unit of gyrocopters is going to still try and go for the baggage train. Turn 2 for me. So the rangers actually have to move a little bit, because I don't want to be in charge range of these guys. Because if I'm going to get charged, I would rather it's just by chariots, because I can deal with that. I can kill one on the stand and shoot, and then get my hand weapon and shields out to absorb the impact hits, and hopefully not lose too badly the first round. And then if we're stuck in combat, I then can switch to the great weapons when the impact hits aren't a problem anymore. The cannons and the engineers open fire. I managed to put stupidity onto this chariot here, so we'll see whether that one's allowed to join in. The Iron Drakes and the handgun of doom take aim as well, and I think I've killed more stuff here. Oh, I killed this chariot. This entire chariot is now dead. Yeah, because there was one parked right here in front of the white lions. So that's dead now. My dwarf warriors with the toughness 10 king have moved up into a position that says, are you going to come and fight us at some point? Because if you are, I'm toughness 10. you should be concerned. Maybe you should start backing away and then let me get to the special feature and not contest it. So that's what I'm going for. I want the enemy to not engage because this area is so terrifying, and then I can just nip onto the special feature. So the Rangers have got out of the charge range of this unit here, so I'm only going to have to deal with these 3 chariots, which I can live with, because you can see we've got 2 chariots down now, with the cannons and the crossbows, or the throwing axes if I was close enough, and the engineers and the iron drakes. We've got rid of 2. Enemy turn 2. One of the chariots decides to charge into the engineer, who decides to hold, because I didn't want him to just redirect into something else and deny me the ability to stand and shoot. So I'll accept that, because now we've only got 2 chariots into the Rangers, which is fine. Only get 1 on the stand and shoot though, which is disappointing. The woodsmen are just heading round the flank there. So, with the Rangers, I lose combat by 1, which I think is a reasonable result here, considering we're against 2 chariots. I don't think that's bad. I think one of them was in a challenge. So, lose by 1. And then roll a double 6 on the leadership test. Wow, wow, wow. And then obviously they flee about 3 inches and get cut down by 2 chariots. So there's the entire Ranger unit dead after double 6ing the leadership test. So, they're paying the price because the BSB is not over here, because he's got the handgun. So this is one downside to having your Handgun of Doom on the BSB. If you're positioning him for his shooting ability, which I was, because I wanted him to be able to shoot through that gap towards the enemy, that means he's not in the middle of the army, so he's not able to let the unit reroll. The general is also in a different unit, all the way up there, doing a different plan. So, wow, wow, wow. Dead Rangers. Runar says, I don't understand why people think dwarves are underpowered. I struggle quite a bit against them and I play vampire counts. It's a tough one. People seem to be of the opinion that dwarves are complete garbage, or they're impossible to play against and just horrible, not fun, you just get shot off in 1 turn. And neither of those things are true. They're not grotesquely bad. They have a lot of issues, but they do have some strong units. Like the Handgun of Doom, they have things like that that are kind of propping up the rest of the army in some ways. Iron Drakes are also very good. They're not dominant. People aren't winning tournaments typically with dwarves. You have a couple of players, a couple of higher end players that tend to win a reasonable amount of tournaments with dwarves. But in general, you don't see them winning events. Vampire counts. Are you playing vampire counts straight out of the rulebook? Are you using renegade vampire counts, perhaps? I don't know what the difference is in terms of the matchup versus dwarves. I'm trying to think how games I've had went against vampire counts. You don't see that many vampire counts compared to some of the other armies, though. I've not played against them a huge amount. I've faced the ethereal vampire counts list before, and that's not gone well for the dwarves due to a lack of magical attacks. I've faced the scream lists that are quite scary when they can reduce your leadership first. So that's quite nasty. They can take the big block of Graveguard, which the Tomb Kings do something very similar as well, where you just get a massive block and they can keep coming back to life as you're fighting it. And dwarves don't generally have the combat damage output to bring something like that down once the fighting starts. And shooting units are all very well, but for scenario play, not the greatest. Wanting the enemy to walk straight towards you and die isn't that inviting when they can potentially camp on an objective or hold a section of the table to try and win instead, and just go round you with dragons and such to get to the squishy stuff in the army. So I don't think dwarves are strong by any means, but I also don't think they're complete garbage. They've got some stuff going for them. There's a lot that we don't see tried because it just doesn't look good on paper. A lot of the engineering stuff we don't see. Like, I'm trying the stupidity guns here. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone else use them. Okay, so you can see that in this turn here, we've got a bit of overrunning action going on. We've got a chariot overrunning into my Thunderers, and you can see that I've bailed out my Thane from the unit of Iron Drakes now because I want to target a different unit so they can shoot different things, and we've actually knocked down another chariot, so there's only one left now, and the gyrocopters are well on their way to the baggage train. They have taken a bit of damage, they just have to survive a bit longer to get there. Turn 3 for me is the units that were already in combat pretty much here. There's going to be more overrunning going on. This is now the enemy turn, actually. Yeah, because it's from the other angle. So this is the enemy turn. We've got some... I think this was a fresh charge. I think this combat they'd already been overrun into. We've got all these woodsmen turn round and shoot at the gyrocopters and kill one of them, so I can now no longer destroy the baggage train. So my plan now is to stop this unit of elves holding their own baggage train at the end of the game by killing one of them, so their unit strength is no longer high enough. So I'm going to get that steam gun in there, try and kill one. And obviously these chariots, now that they've got rid of the rangers, are just rampaging through all my squishy stuff. So all those engineers and cannons, between the 2 cannons and the 2 engineers, that's nearly 400 points of stuff there that's really squishy. So if you get through one of my blocks and get to that meaty centre, it's very difficult for the dwarves to come back from that. So the dwarf warriors moving up into the woods. I kind of want the enemy to charge me now, because I have to beat them and kill them, otherwise it's very difficult for me to win from this point, I think. Turn 4 for me, so the gyrocopter steams off 3 of the elves, which is nice, because now they can't hold their own baggage train at the end of the game and score any points for it. Iron Drakes spin round, and I think this is the general with the big axe. Get him down to 2 wounds with shooting. Handgun Thane pops out here and fires through there. Doesn't look like it does much this time though. And I think I shot off some of that archer unit because I couldn't see the white lions, as he's successfully hiding them there. Turn 4 for the enemy. We've got the chariot into the baggage train. We were weighing up the options for this here, because if you look at the situation, one of them is almost dead. So this one wants to run away and escape. One of them is going to touch the baggage train, because this is an impassable bit of terrain, the baggage train, there is no way for this chariot to escape from the Iron Drakes this turn. So, you either stand there and get shot, start running away, and then get shot, and if you live, you then get away. Or, what's just as good, is touch the baggage train. You might get shot to death, but if you don't, then you destroy the baggage train, and then you can run off and hide in the same turn behind the terrain that's in the corner there. Just off screen in the bottom right. So, it's as good as running away, touching the train, because you may well die anyway. And this one is just hiding over here because they're almost dead. They don't want to give away the points, because the scoring is going to be very close in this one. The gyrocopter is not really under threat because this unit can't charge through the gap that they've set for themselves with their deployment. The archers are hiding at the top there, you can see. Turn 5 for me. And the Iron Drakes, freshly joined by the Handgun Thane, they do finish off that chariot. So the baggage train is safe. The other one is not going to get shot though because it's hiding successfully. Gyrocopter pops out there, flames this unit again, kills a few more of them. If I can kill that unit, that would be a few nice extra points as well. Turn 5 for the enemy. You can see they're just spreading out and hiding from my potential shooting. And they do manage to shoot down the gyrocopter as well, which these spearmen had turned round to face as well. Turn 6 for me. There's not really a whole lot I can do, so I pop out my Thane from the unit and take some pot shots over here at anyone he can reach, but don't manage to kill off an entire unit, which is obviously what you'd expect. And then in the enemy turn, they move up and try and shoot the Thane, but nothing. So, let me just have a quick look here at the final scores for this one, because it was another close one. The round 2 against Cathay was close. That one, I don't think I actually told you what the final score was for that one, but it was close. That one was a 12-8 loss against Cathay. And then round 3, let me just check here. So the elves had just enough points to get an 11-9 win. So obviously I've got this special feature right here. The enemy have got a bit more of a hold on the domination than I do, because the gyrocopters have died. So if that one lives, that potentially is a bit of a point swing as well. I've got this section I do not have this table section here because my dwarf warriors are outnumbered by all that. And I've moved the BSB in here, not only to shoot things, but also because he's denying the enemy some points by being in this table section. So I think it shaves off like 50 points from the 50 victory points. So, a very tiny loss. And obviously, the big thing is the Rangers losing combat by 1 and rolling a double 6 and immediately dying to 2 chariots, which I didn't expect. And then that meant all the chariots then gobbled up all the soft centre of my army that hides behind the blocks. So that was not ideal. Other than that, the elves didn't particularly get too close. The chariots kind of did a bit of a smash and grab, got in, thought, okay, I can't believe that actually works. We've killed this big unit. Let's get what we can and get out of there. And it just about worked. They managed to avoid taking heavy enough losses, which could have turned it back into a draw maybe if I got another chariot. But this one managed to hide successfully. Next game, Encirclement. So you've got your standard deployment, you're building next to the edge there. You just can't go within 12 inches of one of your edges. We've got hills just on the edge of the deployment zone, which is what I like to see, because I can put a shooting unit just there, then move up fully onto the hill at the start of the game. And this one has baggage trains, strategic locations, and no domination in this one. And it's against some very stylish ogres. And I did say to my opponent that for the coolest army voting at the TSN, snow-speckled bases definitely get bonus points. Those are quite popular. They definitely catch the eye. So let me crack open this list here. Okay, so I'll talk you through the layout, the deployment tactics in a minute. But we've got, look at this, we've got a giant crab. It's a tyrant, which is technically on a thunder tusk, but it's actually a thunder crab. And this is the same crab that I have, actually. It's from Titanforge. I got my Titanforge crab in there. It wasn't a closing down sale. I think it was like a closing down of their physical models department or something. So I got like some giants and I got a giant crab. And I think they went almost exclusively into STLs after that. So, sad times, but nice to see another crab out there. Mine hasn't been built yet. It's just sitting in a box waiting for the right moment. We've got a tyrant on a crab with Talisman of Protection and a tenderizer, so he's very strong, very powerful character, gonna hit very hard, be tough to kill. We've got Firebelly, who's in this unit here, level 2 with Battle Magic. We've got a Bruiser BSB with the Armour of Meteoric Iron, which is this one. And you can see the regular standard bearer behind. And then core units got 8 Iron Guts right here. And they have a standard bearer, they've got a champion with obsidian lodestone, they've got a cannibal totem and a musician. So the cannibal totem gives them regeneration. The wizard in there with battle magic is going to try and give them, what is it, Oaken Shield, is it? That gives them the 5+ ward save. So they are going to potentially try and get a triple save this block, so that's going to be quite scary. Then there's 20 Noblars. Let's go back to the wide shot to see the Noblars a little bit, then how they're positioned. So we've got 20 Noblars there, the fightier ones, probably going to hang back on objectives. We've got 2 lots of 12 Noblar trappers with throwing weapons that have started scouting up into the terrain. 3 Saber Tusks there and 3 Saber Tusks there. So not too shabby chaff unit that could do some damage. Then 2 Iron Blasters. So these are actually quite scary. They are kind of like a steam tank, a moving cannon, but their cannon is actually superior to the cannon on a steam tank. I think the steam tank cannon is just a dwarf cannon. These ones are more like a great cannon. But obviously the thing they're mounted on is not as tough as a steam tank, so you've got a bit of a trade-off there. They are tougher than a cannon though, a regular cannon. So in order to destroy it, it's going to take minimum 2 shots from my cannons to take one down, because they have 4 wounds. There's 2 of those. There's one there and one there. We've got a scrap launcher, which is a giant carrying around a catapult. I'll get a close-up of that in a sec. And then we've got 4 Mournfang cavalry. And let's have a look at that. Look at this. Very nice model here. It's just a very cool themed army. Lots of piratey stuff going on with the crab. Very cool indeed. And there's the baggage train hanging out at the back. And let's talk about my deployment now. So, I would like to get the baggage train, so I've put all my gyrocopters over there. I'm concerned about the iron blasters, because obviously they just win against my cannons quite easily. So what I've done is, after one of them was deployed, I've hidden my 2 cannons behind this hill. So the iron blaster cannot shoot me from this hill. It can't see me anymore, because you can't trace line of sight over another hill by being on a hill. So, my cannons are pretty safe from that iron blaster. I decide I'm going to set up in full view of one of them and challenge it to a duel. My 2 cannons versus your 1 iron blaster, and we'll see who wins. So ideally I want to get the first turn and kill it or heavily wound it in turn 1. Then it'll fire back, hopefully miss, but if it doesn't it might kill one. And then next turn I'll finish it off. And that's the plan. 2 on 1. Hide from this one, shoot this one. I've got my BSB and the Iron Drakes. They're going to move up onto the hill. So the Handgun of Doom and the Iron Drakes as the enemy advance on me, which I assume they will do. Especially if they want the special feature in the middle. So I'm going to have all my Iron Drake shots blasting away, particularly into the cavalry. I've got my Rangers hanging out guarding the baggage train, so I can maybe score at the end of the game. I've got the usual combo in there, the Runesmith and Burlock. I've got my Toughness 10 King in with the Warriors, because if this big horrible block of Ogres there gets into combat, I'll want someone who can absorb a bit of punishment from a character, maybe in a challenge, and dish out some pain back, and bringing the leadership 10 as well. So this unit's got a decent static combat resolution, but I hope to shoot that unit down a little bit at least before it gets here. I'm pleased that the enemy general with the crab, with the Thunder Tusk, which is, let's see how many points is that, 473. I'm glad he's at the back, and that it's not just lined up on the front with these guys, because if it all just comes forward in one go, I think that's more of a concern than if it's hiding for a bit. Gyrocopters have vanguarded outwards a bit so that the enemy can't shoot through them into my cannons immediately with the Iron Blaster if they get the first turn. And turn 1 goes to me though. So the Gyrocopters get in position around those Noblar trappers, shoot them with the steam guns from this side, kill half the unit, or at least half, they panic, move over to this side, and then flame them with the other 2 copters and kill them all. So that's great. Stupidity guns finished them off actually. I think there was 1 guy left until the stupidity gun finished him. My 2 cannons open fire at the Iron Blaster and get it down to 1 wound, I think. So it's still alive. Move up onto the hill. My Handgun of Doom shoots and does a little bit of damage to the Mournfang cavalry, I think. So my opponent is on 2 objectives because the Noblars out on the right are still alive, because the Gyrocopters weren't in that direction. So Slight taking the lead on the points. Turn 1 for the enemy. Mournfang moving up right into my face. Noblars repositioning maybe a little bit there. We've got these horrible saber tusks moving around the flank. The other one's guarding the baggage train. The Iron Blaster, with its final wound, opens fire. Kills one of my cannons in 1 shot, which is pretty much what I expected. And that's it, there's moving forward. I'm glad the general is still hiding, because if everything was on me in 1 go, that's usually how people try and deal with the dwarf gun line, is just get their whole army as close to it as possible, and then look to charge into whichever units are going to be the squishiest, so probably not the Iron Drakes. So the Ogres are outscoring me, on the objectives anyway. Turn 2 for me. 1 unit of Gyrocopters charges the Saber Tusks, the other one moves into contact with the baggage train. The thinking behind this is that I want the baggage train, so I want to touch that immediately. If I just touch it, then these Saber Tusks will charge me, and they'll probably kill a Gyrocopter and stop me taking it. I'm thinking that if I charge them, I might do some damage with the impact hits and could win the combat, and therefore be able to maintain the combat with the Saber Tusks for a turn and stop them charging me next turn. So that's the plan there. And I'm not sure whether the Iron Blaster can shoot me from its current position either, because there's potential that it could hit one of the saber tusks. I don't know whether it would be able to draw a line that would bypass them. Cannon finishes off the Iron Blaster on this side, which is great. So we've just got to worry about the one on the hill. And you can see where when I put a dice down in front of the unit like this, it's usually marking which point in the unit it changes from like no cover to light cover, or light cover to heavy cover, something like that. And the Iron Drakes and the Rangers blast the Mournfang to smithereens. There's only one guy left. The Thunderers turn round to shoot at the Saber Tusks, but don't do anything. And I'm quite happy with this at the moment. That unit that's really scary is quite far away. So the enemy are outscoring me on the objectives though. See with these two, and I've only got the one still. Enemy turn. Saber Tusks into the Thunderers. They lose one on the stand and shoot, which is good. And obviously the final Mournfang dies on stand and shoot as well. I can't remember whether it charged in intentionally or whether they have Frenzy. It has, let's see, it had the Bull standard. I don't know if that gives them Frenzy maybe. Or whether he just chose to charge in, I can't remember. Or Impetuous. And now, this is where it's suddenly looking scary. So imagine if we saw this earlier. We've got Thunder Tusk, this horrible block that hasn't actually got off the spell yet to give them the triple save, but this block of Doom and the Mournfang all at the same time, I think that would have been scarier than this kind of staggered approach we've been getting so far. But look at that. Crabby goodness. And a pirate riding on it. What could be more terrifying? Okay, so the Iron Blaster. What does the Iron Blaster do? The Iron Blaster shoots down some dwarves. It's trying to put the cannonball through my king and potentially do some damage to him. But look out, sir. It's obviously difficult to wound the king with a cannon as well, being toughness 10. So even with strength 10, you're only wounding it on 4s. The Gyrocopters defeat the Saber Tusks this turn, again, and they disappear off the table, which is great. The other Saber Tusks lose to the Thunderers, which is also great. So, the enemy is still outscoring me though, doubling my objective scoring, so I'm going to have to resolve this. Turn 3 for me. So, the Rangers do a bit of spinning, because they don't want to get flanked by anyone, and they're going to start blasting away at this unit, but you can see I've only killed one, which is not a lot. The Iron Drakes have also spun round to shoot over there, and there's just the one removed. I take away the baggage train though, so there's a nice big 250 points for me, and then the Gyrocopters move away and they're going to start trying to flame the Noblars, try and knock this unit down so it can't score this objective anymore. Now, this is a risk what I've done here, because I've rotated my units to face the enemy. If this guy gets into the Rangers and manages to beat them in combat and pushes them back, or even just kills them entirely, there's potential, if more than one unit maybe gets into them at some point, for an overrun into the Iron Drakes, bypassing their stand and shoot, which is obviously significant when they're on a hill. All of them. 18 of them, plus the Handgun of Doom. So I don't want anyone going through the Rangers into the Iron Drakes. And the way I've set up means that is something that could happen at some point. So we'll see whether I can avoid that. Enemy turn. The Ogres and the Saber Tusks charge into the Thunderers, which I find interesting. And the Thunder Tusk General Tyrant charges into the Rangers on his own, takes 3 wounds on the stand and shoot, which is good. Something that big and tough. And here, obviously, the Ogres want to kill the Thunderers and just overrun through. Now, I'm not sure why they haven't charged into these. I think maybe they thought it was too far and they would just fail. So what they would rather do is get the easy charge. The Saber Tusks then overrun this way to clear the path, then they overrun into the Dwarves. So I think it was just a safer charge going in here, so maybe that's the logic behind it. Thunder Tusk taking wounds, that's what we like to see. So this combat gets crunchy. The Thunder Tusk gets in, but with the 3 deficit on the combat, so I'm probably going to win this combat. The Rangers don't have a huge combat res though, because they're not close order. They do have a standard bearer. They do outnumber the enemy, and I've got 3 on the stand and shoot. So it's a reasonable chance of doing something here. It's possible I just lose a little bit and fall back, which wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing, but with fighting this thing, actually, in a prolonged combat, I may end up switching to the great weapons, because there's so many here, and it's only fighting 1 monster, and it's already damaged, so potentially could get something done there with great weapons. Iron Blaster opens fire, kills another dwarf from the warriors unit. Thunderers obviously die. The Saber Tusks overrun about 5 inches, obviously not far enough, and they block the Ogre Iron Guts from getting into the dwarf warriors for the turn. I think we end up tying this combat here. So I lose my champion, and I lost another one to the impact hit. And then, yep, with my static combat res with the standard bearer and outnumbering and a rank. Should that have put me on 6? It looks like I won via musician anyway, so I just nudged it back, which is fine, because now I can shoot it to smithereens. Okay, that's how it looks going into my turn 4. So what are we going to do? We're going to get round the flanks of these Noblars, start toasting them with 4 flame templates. We're going to shoot everything we've got into this giant enemy crab, target its weak point for massive damage. Anyone gets those references, I'll be very pleased. The Dwarf Warriors charge into the Saber Tusks. They flee, and I crash into the Ogres, which is okay because they don't get impact hits when they don't charge me. And also, the angle I've hit them at, they're going to lose a lot of their attacks as well, because many of them aren't in base contact. So I'm not too bothered, actually, that I hit them like this. And we end up with a... looks like we get a lot of combat res there, but not a huge amount of damage done. And that may be a lie, surely. Have they got 9? Yeah, I suppose they've got a BSB and a standard in there as well, and a rank. Yeah, so we scored 9 each, and they killed a few. Nothing really happened in the challenge. I think there was a challenge between the champion who just about died and whoever accepted that. It may have been the Firebelly. Actually, I don't think it was the Firebelly, because the king was able to hit the Firebelly, but didn't do much. Because there is the regen save going on in there, which also goes on the combat res, which explains why there's not many of them dead, but I've still got a high combat res. All my shooting, my entire army's shooting output, all the rangers, all the Iron Drakes, the Handgun of Doom, Burlock's pistol, all of them blast into this giant enemy crab and get it down to 1 wound. So that crab is now in danger. That is a really concerned crab, concerned crustacean. The same thing that happened to the Noblars out on the left flank, where they got shot from one side, fled, and then got shot from the other side, happens here. And they don't quite get wiped out though, they're down to 4, because they lost so many from this side, fled, and then the flames from this side finished off even more of them, but not quite the whole unit. So, we've got a crab with 1 wound, and all it can do is charge, because if it runs away it just gets shot and dies anyway, so you might as well go for it and try and get lucky. So, here we go, turn 4 for the enemy. The Saber Tusks are still running away. The Noblars are still running away. The crab charges into the Rangers. So how many Rangers have we got left alive here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. It's a large target, so all 18 Rangers and Burlock's pistol fire into it, hitting on 3s. And then I think it's toughness 6, so just looking for a 6 to kill it. Don't roll a single 6. There was like 14 wound rolls I was making, didn't roll 1 6, and it makes it in on 1 wound, survives the stand and shoot. Okay, it's going to be spicy then. Yep, there's the thumb down signifying not a single wound from the stand and shoot to finish off the crab on its final wound. And if that kills the crab, I think that just wins the game probably, because it's the enemy general, and I've got my 2 shooting units lined up here, so even if this combat goes badly, I can then just start obliterating this unit with shooting as well, I think. I think that just wins if I kill this thing. So we'll see how the combat goes anyway, because I can still go with my great weapons and try and finish it off that way. Then we've got the Iron Guts. They beat me in combat with my Dwarf Warriors, with the King. And yeah, that does not go very well at all. So you'll see that I've only got a combat of resolution of 1 because of the amount of dwarves that they killed. So if you look here, they just murdered a huge amount of them this turn. And my king wasn't able to prop up the combat res by himself. And they just died. Fled, got cut down, they fled like 2 inches, got caught, died. Iron Guts turned around to face this way. Now, the juicy one. You can see they did get Oaken Shield off this turn, which helped them a lot because they've got a triple save. Then we lose 7 Rangers, but then the great weapons do kill the crab in the end, so that's good. So I think that puts me in a very strong, potentially winning position now, because we've killed the enemy general. My general's died as well, but I think these 2 units surely going to be enough to kill these guys with their shooting, because I'm on a hill and I've got a million Iron Drake shots that are going to be wounding them on 3s, but they do have a triple save now. So suddenly, because of that, looking a bit dicey, but it's still a bloodbath, this game anyway. We're just slaughtering each other. The enemy are picking up a bit of steam with the objective scoring though. Not anymore from this one, so they've only got this one now with the Noblars, and I've just got this one with the Rangers. And I'm also guarding my own baggage train and potentially contesting the special feature with these Rangers, so it's important that the Rangers survive now, because they're my only core unit that can do that. Turn 5 for me. So, my entire army's shooting output into the Iron Guts. The Gyrocopters getting into position to do some flaming later. And guess how many wounds I did against the Iron Guts in the turn? It was either 0 or 1 from all these Iron Drakes and all these Rangers. Basically nothing to them with their triple saves. Oh dear. That suddenly makes it very dicey, and you can see the potential for this unit dying now. And that's exactly what happens. And again, my units decide they're going to flee 1 inch and die, which I can just about tolerate because it means that the Iron Guts do not get into the Iron Drakes. And the Noblars pop out and try and do some shooting at the Gyrocopters, but their strength is just too low. So, we're going to go into my turn 6. I'm going to be able to take some big shots into these guys and try and whittle them down. Because he's not in combat with the Iron Drakes yet, there is no way I'm losing this unit now. Because they've got a ward save and they're stubborn, and there's only 1 more turn that they're going to be fighting. So there's no way that all these Iron Drakes are going to die in combat in 1 round with a ward save, 4-up save, stand and shoot. So I think they're going to be fine because they're stubborn. Turn 6 for me. I blast away into the Iron Guts, managed to kill 1, I think, because there was already 1 dead. And I make them stupid as well, which I kind of regret doing, because I would rather they just charge me and take the stand and shoot and die, because they're not going to kill me because I'm stubborn. If I get a really big stand and shoot on them and beat them in combat, and they flee in the last turn, they're going to be worth a lot of points. Gyrocopters dancing around, chasing Noblars and Sabertusks around, killing the Noblars, I think. Sabertusks are still running though. Turn 6 for the enemy. Iron Blaster is stupid and fails its stupidity test because I shot it with a stupidity gun. This unit passes its stupidity test but decides not to charge. And I think that is probably the right choice. Unless you're really confident you can kill this BSB, who's got a 3-up save with Gromrel armor and a 5+ ward save, that's the only way you're going to get the points. Because you're not going to kill the Iron Drakes and they're stubborn. So I think it's probably the correct thing is to not charge there. However, what my opponent does neglect is shuffling this way to claim the special feature instead of my baggage train. So it's just staying on my baggage train instead. So if you do charge in here, how many wounds do you think you take? Because the ward save spell did not go off this turn. If it did go off, that would be a very tough choice to decide whether to go in and try and kill some stuff. But once it failed, I think the correct move is to not charge in here, because you're going to take a lot of damage on the stand and shoot with only one save. The Cinderblast bombs are going to be in range as well. You've got the Handgun of Doom. You could take like 7 or 8 wounds at least if you're not lucky there. And making that deficit up in combat against a unit that has a BSB and a banner and a rune of battle and a rank and a close order and might outnumber you potentially, and a stubborn anyway. So I don't think you're going to achieve much going in there. So I think that was the right choice by the Ogre player. So we went to the scoring because we don't know who's won at this stage, if anyone. So let me just have a look at the final score for you here. Okay, so we did all the maths, worked out the scoring. The Ogres had the edge on the objectives. I had the edge on destroying a baggage train, and killing was kind of equal. You can see we've both killed a lot. We've both got some expensive stuff left as well, but most of it is dead. There's not a lot left on the table. Somehow the gyrocopters have survived the whole game, even though there's enemy cannons, which is rare. And we work out that there is a difference between us. You need 200 points for it to be a win. There is a difference of 12 points. So you can't really get much closer for a draw than that. So it is just a draw. It's the drawiest draw you've ever seen in your life. 12 points in it. And it's just a draw. And I think the Ogres would have happily accepted that, even knowing it was a draw. Because going in there is too big of a risk for very little possibility of a big reward, I think. So, onto the armies that were laid out for the coolest army voting. So these are the Cathay that I played against in one of the earlier rounds. Very stylish, very clean, some nice banners. Very nice bases. You get bonus points for having the little plastic plants on there as well. Very nice banners. I don't know if these are just Cathay transfers or whether any of these are hand-painted. I honestly can't tell. That one looks more like a transfer, whereas this one looks more hand-painted. But I don't know that for a fact. I haven't looked at the Cathayan transfer sheet. If they're all hand-painted, then good on you. Then we've got the Ogres, with the giant enemy crab, of course. And there was the baggage train, which is very meaty compared to my actual cabbages. Then we've got some High Elves with dragons. High Elves, one of the armies that can still put out multiple strong dragons in a competitive setting. We've got the Orcs that I faced as well. Very cool models here. We've got Bretonians, a Bretonian infantry army. Is there any cavalry in there at all? Maybe just this Pegasus. We've got a couple of trebuchet, but it's mostly peasants and foot knights. So that's an interesting twist on the Bretonians that you don't see very often. We've got some demons. You don't see them, but because of the renegade, the square-based renegade pack, some of these armies are a bit more viable now. They've had more tweaks in the last couple of weeks, and that was a good rhyme there. Soul Grinder, Flesh Hounds, and then we've got some Ogres, Snake Ogres. These are very cool. Very, very cool kind of lava snake colour scheme. Big beastie there. Very nice indeed. And we've got some dwarves. Mega infantry block dwarves. So we've got what appears to be some hammerers, some iron breakers, some longbeards, and are those more iron breakers? They might not be iron breakers, they might just be reminiscent of iron breakers. Yeah, they don't have the iron breaker helmets, that I can tell. So they might just be warriors or longbeards or royal clan warriors they might be actually. Yeah, there was a royal clans player, so I think they're probably royal clan warriors, which are basically somewhere between a longbeard and an ironbreaker anyway, visually. Then we've got some beastmen. There are wood elves coming up. I just saw the green and went off prematurely there. We've got the beastmen. Very nice, especially the big monsters. It's always good to see Gorgon and Cygor around the place. No Jabberslithe though. Very disappointing. We have got some more demons. We've got loads of Furies. We've got a Bloodthirster. Here's the Wood Elves. Now, look at this. Look at those wings. That is outrageous. And normally, I've seen people use these trees, these leaves, on bases before. And I don't know if anyone's pulled it off to this level before. Because it doesn't crowd the model too much. I think somehow it adds to the model. I don't know what causes that. I don't know what's going on in my brain that's recognizing art that's good. But something about these leaves, it fits in, but it doesn't just blend together and look like part of the model. You can tell that this is the miniature here and this is the base. But somehow it also fits with the colours. I don't know. Very nice though. And there's also this big guy. Now, this looks way too big for this tree man. Is this either a Forge World tree man with an extra tree on him, or is this a 3D print enlarged version of a classic tree man? I don't know, honestly. But look at that dragon. Very nice. And bonus points for the classic single pose plastic wood elves that I had back in the 90s as well. So, final game. Close quarter. Can't deploy too close to the edge. And we're going to have trees in the deployment zone and buildings in the middle. There are no baggage trains. Repeat, no baggage trains. So strategic locations and domination. So, up against demons. So let me crack open the demon list. Assuming I can find it on here. There we go. The Renegade Demons. Let's go and have a look what they've got. We have got a Soul Grinder, which is this... Is it the... What was the name of it? Was it the Vortex Beast? What was the other version of it? Either way, it's a Soul Grinder for the purposes of this game. We've got 3 Blood Crushers of Khorne, represented by these horrible creatures here. We've got 2 lots of 14 Chaos Furies. We've got a Bloodthirster with a Blood Flail, that's the general. We've got Demon Prince, Heavy Armour, a level 4 Tzeentch Wizard. We've got a Herald of Khorne somewhere, which is this one, which is on a Juggernaut. And we've got 3 more Blood Crushers, which are... Hold on, let's go back to the wide shot for a second so I can just show you in context where everything is. Blood Crushers, Blood Crushers. There is the Herald, Harold the Herald, on a Juggernaut. We've got the Flesh Hounds, 2 lots of 5 Flesh Hounds. Templar says, oh, is this talking about why Vampire can't struggle against Dwarves? Vampires can't flee charges. That could be a reason, because most people, if they don't want to fight Dwarves, they just run away and they're not going to get caught. So maybe that's why Vampires don't like it. So we've got Flesh Hounds here, and the other Flesh Hounds, I believe, are ambushers. These ones are Vanguard, the other ones are ambush. Okay, by the way, I forgot to mention actually, the secret objectives, because they haven't been accomplished very much, so I haven't really been mentioning them, and they don't impact on the scores hugely, but in the game with the Ogres, we actually both got our secret objective. My opponent killed some of my banners, and I killed all of the opponent's monsters when I killed the giant crab. So we both actually got our secret objectives in that game. So I've never seen that happen before, that both players accomplish it. So, what is my plan here? Because these demons are very fast. Everything is fast. There's loads of swift stride. They hit very hard. They can get a lot of attacks. They're just very dangerous, all of these units. And even the ones that you would think are chaff, like the Furies and the Flesh Hounds, those are actually quite strong as well. So, I think we just have to invite them to land in front of me, make sure I've set up in such a way that none of my squishy stuff can get charged, and try and shoot them to death and then absorb the charge. It sounds simple, but if I give them a chance, a sniff of landing anywhere, like charging a cannon and getting behind me, then potentially that's game over. Because I don't want to spend the whole time turning around my units when there's juggernauts looking at me from the other side. So I don't want them getting behind me. So we'll see if I've wrangled that sufficiently. The gyrocopters don't have any cabbage to hunt, so they're just going to be annoying as much as they can and try and flame things. So they're hiding behind the hills right now, so they're not going to get charged immediately. And let's get into the game. Turn 1, the enemy go first and start moving up and continue moving up. And so I just about positioned the Iron Drake sufficiently so the Bloodthirster wasn't able to use a magic spell to get extra movement and then fly over me and turn around to face me. I managed to position in such a way that it doesn't have any movement left by the time it gets here. So that's fortunate. If I had them like 1 inch further forward, it'd be able to get in here and turn to face me, I think. But the angle it was at, it had to turn first to reach this trajectory, which is the only way it could clear my unit. Which is good for me. Then you can see the Furies, the horrible Blood Crushers in the middle there. The other Furies is just hanging out around the objective. Soul Grinder on the hill, because it can shoot and then use reserve move. And I was thinking, reserve move on a giant lumbering demon? That sounds weird. But actually, it makes a lot of sense, because it is just a big hulking mass. It shouldn't have to slow down to shoot you. And it makes me think, which Beastman monster is it that has the big stone over his head? Is it the Cygor or the Gorgon? But whichever one it is, that should have reserve move if it doesn't, because it should just move, be able to throw its rock, and then just keep moving. So if it doesn't have it, then boo. That makes more sense than archers shooting and continuing to run, in my opinion. A big monster shouldn't have to slow down to throw something at you. So we've got the Soul Grinder right in our face as well. Okay then, so the good thing is the Bloodthirster is not looking at me yet, so I don't have to worry about that for a turn. I can focus on shooting other things. I'm not worried about Fleshhounds charging me in the flank particularly, because not that many of them are going to be able to hit me, and I've got a ward save in the Iron Drake unit, so I'm not scared of them. I've got my Toughness 10 King in the Rangers, in case anyone was able to get to me. But because it looks like the Iron Drakes potentially could be hit with more stuff than the Rangers right now, I'm tempted to just move him straight into this unit and get the double characters in there. Because the Rangers are less likely to be hit by multiple units right now. Over here you can see, oh by the way I didn't mention this, I've got my 5 Thunderers directly in front of the Dwarf Warriors. Because these Blood Crushers, I believe they do impact hits. So I want them to charge in, kill the Thunderers, and then, even if they overrun, they're not getting impact hits into my Dwarf Warriors. So this flank is way less protected than it usually is. There's no characters in there. I'm going to try and make these units stupid as well, because they're miles away from the enemy general, who is all the way over here. And I've got cannons, so they can fire at potentially large targets. We've got the Bloodthirster and the Soul Grinder, so we're going to try and shoot the Soul Grinder probably. Bloodthirst is tempting, but it's not looking at me yet, so it's less scary. You can see one of the gyrocopters was killed by the Soul Grinder's shooting as well. Turn 1 for me. So I make the Blood Crushers stupid with an engineer's gun. I put wounds onto them as well. The ones in the middle, you can see I do put my king into the Iron Drakes as well. Gyrocopters put some wounds onto the Fleshhounds there. I put a few wounds onto the Blood Crushers there, but not a huge amount of damage turn 1. I do actually decide that the cannons are going to fire at the Bloodthirster in turn 1, because this guy I've determined can't actually charge me yet, that I can remember. I think he's slightly too far away. One of the few things that doesn't have Swift Stride, so I decide I'll take the opportunity to try and get the Bloodthirster while I can see it. Both cannons hit it, both cannons wound, but the Bloodthirster makes his 5-up ward save against both cannonballs, so that's very sad. Okay, it's very disappointing round 1 of shooting. I only did about 3 wounds across the whole lot and made 1 unit stupid. So let's see how turn 2 goes for the enemy, because the charges are going to start coming in. We've got Blood Crushers coming in. They're going to take stand and shoot and then kill the Thunderers, no doubt. The Furies are going into the Rangers, which I don't mind, because I think my stand and shoot will kill a few of them, even though they are skirmishers. And I think I can stand up to that punishment. Maybe underestimating them a bit, because when they get in I then find out they are quite strong, actually. No one wants to charge the front of the Iron Drakes, boo-hoo. The Fleshhounds are going to go in the flank, but there's no way they'll win the combat against me there. So these guys aren't really in this kind of chessboard formation here. They just can't stand next to each other because their wings are too pokey. And the Blood Crushers get into the Thunderers as expected. They don't take any damage on the way in, which is sad. And the enemy units are rightly hesitant to charge into the front of the Iron Drakes, as you can imagine. So the Fleshhounds do get in. Over here, we've got the Herald is just moving into position for next time, so maybe he can charge a cannon or an engineer or something. You can see that I've actually got my engineer behind the Thunderers, slightly ahead of the Dwarf Warriors here. So I can either choose to try and dive out of the way, or just choose to absorb the charge with the engineer and have another turn of the Warriors not fighting. The Blood Crushers in the middle decide, you know what? A giant block of Iron Drakes with Drake guns and Cinderblast bombs, a handgun of Doomthane with a ward save banner, and a toughness 10 king does not sound like something we want to fight. Instead, we're going to go this way. Which is a reasonable thing to assume that you wouldn't win that fight. Okay, so the Bloodthirster couldn't charge anyone because it wasn't looking at anyone, has moved into position to threaten the cannons now. I decide I'm going to hop the engineer out of the way, because you know what, you're not getting your impact hits, come and fight my Dwarf Warriors. I'd rather fight now while the Soul Grinder isn't actively fighting me as well. You can see my Gyrocopter moved away from the enemy as fast as possible, instead of trying to get behind them as well. I get 3 stand and shoot on the Furies, and then in combats they actually kill quite a few Rangers, but I kill a few of them as well, and I end up winning combat. So they scored 8, so they got a good number of kills there. I scored 11 by the looks of it though, and you can see there's not many of them left now. So the Rangers did take quite a punch from those Furies. How many points are the Furies? Let's have a look. About 200 points for those Furies, and my Rangers are 333 points, plus Burlock and the Runesmith, so between them that's almost another 200 points. So that's a really expensive block that's been heavily dented by these Furies now. They were tooled up though, because they did have a spell cast on them to give them additional attacks, I think. And on the charge they were coming in high strength. They're just dangerous. They're not like your crummy, typical flying chaff unit. These guys are actually a strong fighting force. The Fleshhounds do very little. They kill 2 Iron Drakes, lose the combat and bounce away as you'd expect. Then, there's the scoring on the objectives. My turn too. So, my Dwarf Warriors actually end up winning the combat against this unit here. As you can see, if we go back, they had been over and into, but I managed to finish off one of them in the fight, and they bounce off. So I'm able to rotate. I'm trying to get everyone in the front, but there's not enough space to do it, so the Soul Grinder is going to be able to get a flank. My Gyrocopter is just hanging out to try and flame these Furies to death, so everyone else can shoot into these Blood Crushers. The remaining Rangers and all the Iron Drakes start blasting them. I'm just ignoring the Fleshhounds entirely. I don't care about them at all. I think Iron Drakes are pretty good when it comes to dealing with them. Concerned about the Rangers, but I was hoping the cannons would do a job on the Bloodthirster this turn, and they do. They both get through, and they leave him alive on 1 wound. So we've got a Bloodthirster running around with 1 wound, and it is the enemy general. So that is potentially very dangerous, but also a very exciting opportunity to potentially kill it at some point. Would have been nice if one of the cannonballs in the previous turn had gone through, and now he'd be dead. Okay, the Gyrocopter's just buzzing around, flaming the Fleshhounds, not accomplishing much. And here, the Blood Crushers, because they've got this army-wide 5+ ward save, they're actually making quite a lot of them, which is mitigating my shooting damage quite a lot. Turn 3 for the enemy. Yeah, there's the Bloodthirster with his 1 wound running around. We've got a human finger pointing with a slightly blurry photo of the Blood Crushers and the Soul Grinder going into the Dwarf Warriors. we've got the Herald charging through there at one of the cannons, I think. Bloodthirster charging. The Blood Crusher there and the Furies are both going into the Rangers. And I think I kill one of the Blood Crushers on the way in. And lovely upside down shot of the two Flesh Hounds. One of them going into the flank of the Rangers, the other one going into the rear of the Iron Drakes, which isn't a concern. Bloodthirster with its last wound gets into the cannon. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if a cannon crew member took the last wound of a Bloodthirster? I don't think it'll happen, but you never know. And then with big flyers like this, if you've got war machines that are remotely close together, they'll always be able to find an angle where they can overrun from one into the other. Because you're a skirmishing war machine, so you have to align to them anyway, so they can just find the right spot. We've also got Harold the Herald has gone into the Rangers as well. So there's a few units have gone in there. We've also got Flesh Hounds in the flank, the other one into the rear of the Iron Drakes. So, let's see how this goes. The Blood Crushers and the Soul Grinder win the combat against my Dwarf Warriors, but they hold firm. I think you can see a 2 there. I think that maybe was the leadership test. I didn't roll very high on the test at all, so they're okay for now. They end up giving ground. One cannon down, Bloodthirster stomps over into the next cannon. Then, on the Rangers, look at that. I lose by 1. So the enemy don't actually have an amazing round of fighting. I've not lost a huge amount compared to how many were already dead. And I do okay on the hit back. +3 for my stand and shoot. I lose by 1. And then the Iron Drakes obviously defeat the Flesh Hounds, and because of their demonic instability, they just disappear in a cloud of smoke. And the reason that was able to happen is because I was able to make way, because I was adjacent to the fighting rank. I was able to make my way through with my characters to fight them. So, I think I got them down to a couple, and then the last 2 exploded. And then I'm able to turn around and now face this area with my very dangerous shooting block, where all these enemies are. But my other units need to hold on, or even if I kill half this stuff, it won't be enough to win. Because I've got a lot of points tied up on this side as well. But clearly not as many as in this unit, where I've got my 2 mega expensive characters and my most expensive units. This whole block here is probably about 1,000 points. Enemy turn. The Dwarf Warriors go down to the combined might of the Soul Grinder and the Blood Crushers. Bloodthirster picks up the last cannon. And in combat, the Rangers lose again. But they hold firm yet again. The Runesmith's in a challenge with the champion of the Blood Crushers there, and isn't dead, which is good. You can see my Gyrocopter got involved in this fight as well last time, or in my turn gets involved. Because what we realised is I could charge into the Herald and get killed, or I could charge into the guy that's already in a challenge, so I'd get the bonus for a flank charge, but he couldn't attack me because he's in a challenge with someone else. So that sounds good. So I'd send him in there. It means I don't get my impact hits, but then the Gyrocopter obviously can't die. My Toughness 10 King piles out of the Iron Drake unit because he wants to go and get involved in the fighting now while they're doing the shooting. So look at this situation. The Rangers are hanging in there. Can they hold on for one more turn so the King can come and join in and swing his mighty axe? We've also got Gyrocopters coming in to support as well. So, turn 4 for the enemy. And you can see on victory points the enemy are slightly ahead for the objectives, but not by much. So everyone else is ploughing through everything I've got here. The cannons are all gone. My engineers are running away though. Trying to charge them, but they're fleeing and escaping. They don't want to just give away easy points. The Bloodthirster's now got into the Rangers, so it could be the time that the Rangers get crunched here. And the Rangers lose by a huge amount and die, as you'd expect. However, look at all these tasty targets now sitting out in the open. So, into my turn. The King, Toughness 10 King, charges into the final Blood Crusher, but does not kill it, sadly, because of its demonic ward save. The Iron Drakes and the Gunthane of Doom, though, do manage to finish off the Bloodthirster. Because it was only on 1 wound, but now it's dead. If it had died a little bit earlier, maybe we'd still have some cannons as well. Then, in the enemy turn, the enemy are now focusing on... You can see my engineers just hiding behind the building as well. The enemy now start focusing in turn 5 on hiding. So running away with things that are still alive and not giving away points and making sure they don't die because they're so concerned about this big block of Iron Drakes, as you should be. And my slideshow has just stopped there abruptly, so I think it's run out of slideshow power. So let me just bring up the episode thumbnail there. And I think I may have to restart the old slideshow for you. Let me just get on that. So, closing that. And yes, there are definitely some more pictures. I didn't imagine them. Let me just find where we were. There's not even that many pictures left, so that's very cruel of it to not even get through that final picture or two. Where are we? Okay, I think this is about the stage here. Okay, there we go. There have been a few tournaments, like really long mega tournaments, where I've definitely run out of slideshow power on OBS, which is what I use for the streaming. So I don't know what actually causes that, whether a Windows slideshow just can't be that long, because I don't put the pictures into OBS because that takes up way too much power. Okay, so you can see the enemy are hiding. I'm trying to shoot them. I do get the Blood Crusher with the king, but because it took one more turn than I hoped, now most of the other enemies have run away. Turn 5, the king then finishes off the hounds, and the Iron Drakes and the Gun Thane of Doom do some shooting but don't manage to kill anything over here, so they're going to be able to hide, including the Herald. Turn 6 for the enemy, they just completely hide. Now, domination is in effect, which means that because they're hiding, they are not contesting some of the table sections, which is interesting. It's a tough choice to make. Do you stand out in the open, contesting an area, when there's Iron Drakes looking at you, and potentially die? Or do you just go and make yourself safe, but give up contesting an area? Because I've got the edge on domination here, because I have these two table sections totally uncontested. And I've got a unit up in here, the gyrocopter, and I'm going to be able to put another one, this gyrocopter unit, into this section. So I can contest both the enemy's sections. So that's going to get me some points. So the enemy have outscored me on the objectives for the strategic locations, but I'm going to have the edge on domination. In terms of kill points, I've got a lot of points left here. The enemy has got a decent chunk left as well, because the wizard Demon Prince is still alive. The enemy general is dead, so I've got the bonus there. So it's going to be another very close scoring situation here. And we have to start doing maths, work out if anyone's won. You can see in the last turn as well that my Thane popped out the Iron Drake unit just to shoot at the Furies there. Because if he gets lucky, he could wipe the entire unit almost and get some points for them. So, and that is the final image of the game. So that is where we end. Demons hiding. And rightly so, I think, because you don't want to get shot by this. So let me go and tell you the final score here. Just getting onto the matchup here. Okay, so Demons versus Dwarves. What do you think? What do you think is the result here? Do you think someone's done enough to win? Killing looks fairly even. I've got the edge on domination and on killing a general, and the enemy has the edge on the strategic location scoring. What do you think? And the result is another draw. Wow, wow, wow. So 2 draws to end the event. So we started off big with that massive win over the Troll Horde, 2 very narrow losses to Cathay and High Elves, and then 2 draws with Ogres and Demons. So apart from the big steamroll in game 1, all the other games were extremely close. There was barely any points in any of those games, really. Very little difference at all, even though in the game against Cathay, for example, I don't think I killed 1 unit, but it was still a close score. So this dwarf list, I think, is very resilient, depending where I position the characters. No one really wants to tangle with the Iron Drakes. I believe they made it out of every game. And the BSB or whoever was in that unit obviously made it out of each game as well. And the issue is, it's similar to the early issues with Old World and Dwarves, which is you can make these big blocks that are really tough to kill, load them up with characters, the enemy just don't touch them. The enemy go and kill the squishy stuff, and they win just based on that, because you can't catch them with any of your stuff. So Dwarves actually now are in a slightly better position because of the updates that they brought in with the matched play, where you can now score scenario points for other things other than just killing. So that actually helps Dwarves a lot. The infantry changes helped a lot as well. So you can make these big unkillable blocks, but those blocks can actually score points now if the enemy don't go near them. They can potentially score points. Not so much the Iron Drakes, because they're not coarse, there's a lot of things they can't do and can't score, but the Rangers certainly can, and you can make the Rangers very dangerous to go after as well if you load them up with characters, just not as scary as the Iron Drakes. So, what have we learned here? Dwarves are really good at having very close games. And did we learn that things like cannons and engineers and gyrocopters are all well and good, but are they still just a points liability if the enemy wants to kill them? The gyrocopters actually, I think, fall down on the side of definitely worth keeping, because they got me some baggage trains, and in some of the games they actually lived as well, and they caused havoc. The 4 steam guns were really good at clearing out chaff, way better than clatter guns have been lately, so I like those, and I can definitely see myself persisting with gyrocopters or even adding more of them. The 2 engineers with stupidity guns are hilarious, and in some games they actually stopped me being charged or shot, which could have been game winning in certain instances. But they're also nearly 100 points each, and I don't think that's quite worth it. When you combine that with adding a reroll to a cannon, the dwarf cannons, which aren't optimal at all, they kind of worked in this list, apart from when I managed to get them killed. When they didn't get killed and they were able to just fire off shots over the course of the game, they actually did okay. So I think positioning them on the flanks was the best use of them, because you can't roll from one into the other, so not putting them too close together seemed to work better than when I had them more compact. Because the enemy can get round the blocks unless you just corner camp, in which case the enemy don't engage you at all and you just lose on the scenario. So, not 100% sold on cannons, obviously we knew that going in that they weren't great. The engineers, they're so fun though, those stupidity guns. So I do like them just for that. I just don't know if they're worth the points. I'm falling down on the side of no, I think. But it is fun. I would recommend anyone try a pair of engineers with stupidity guns. It's definitely fun. Especially if you're against an army with low leadership. You get some good joy out of them. They're just expensive and they die, sadly. And it's just another thing in the army that's squishy and gives up points. Which is what you don't want to do as dwarves. You want to deny those points. So what could I get instead of those engineers? Doom Seekers, which obviously don't give away victory points unless the enemy manages to avoid them for the whole game, which is hard to do. If you use them, for example, to guard a baggage train, then the enemy is kind of scared to go after that train, probably. So maybe you end up giving up the points for the Doom Seekers, but you keep the train alive, which maybe is better. And you can always use them to go and chase down the enemy as well if they're not fast. So Doom Seekers are fun. The most fun thing for me as a dwarf player is putting the 3 different stages of the organ gun out on the table. But sadly, they are not too viable, especially when Iron Drakes are so good and they compete for the same section of the army list. So sadly, organ guns, not too viable. What have I learned from this? Iron Drakes, probably the best unit, and bring more of them. I'm not necessarily going to get any more Iron Drakes, I've already got 20. I don't think I really need more. And it's difficult to actually fit more in, because you are limited when you're taking these super expensive characters. There's 2 characters there that are over 300 points each. Gyrocopters, I'd probably add more of those in place of the engineers. So the points, there's not a lot of them to go around, because the core is already close to minimum, with the Rangers being shrunk now due to the new restrictions on unit size for them. Dwarf Warriors did quite an important job in this list, I think. They held up some decent units at times, and they can actually become quite scary when you put a big character in with them as well. The 5 Thunderers I think did fine actually. I find them much better than 10. 10 is too unwieldy when you string them out. They tend to get in the way of other units, and they don't do enough just as basic Thunderers. They still die the same when someone charges them anyway. I think the unit of 5 was actually nice. Because even with 10 you think, well, you can sit on an objective with them, but as soon as you lose 1 you can't do that anymore. So I think 5 is quite good for them. And I'd consider maybe running a second unit of 5 Thunderers, because they don't give up many points. The enemy aren't quite sure what to do with them sometimes, I think. Like, what do you send after just a 50-point unit of 5 guys that can still shoot you? If you send a really weedy chaff unit after them, there's a potential you can just die from stand and shoot, so it's a risk doing that. So you have to send something after them. And they don't get in the way because they're so narrow. So I'm leaning towards maybe including more little minimum size units that shoot as well. I might try it with Quarrelers also, for the longer range on their crossbows. That could be interesting. Have to try that at some point. But I want to get these 2 gyrocopters finished, and then I'm going to move on to painting some Longbeards after that, which gives me a whole load of new list options for building. It lets me look potentially at royal clans as well, because you can take... let's see, because the only issue with me and royal clans at the moment is that I need the core, and you can't take rangers as core in royal clans. So the core requirements, I would have to either touch up all my great weapon dwarf warriors, which I don't really want to do at the moment, repainting loads of beards like I did for my hand weapon and shield ones. I've got 30 dwarf warriors with great weapons, but they are looking very year 2000 painting quality, so they would need a bit of work. I'd rather just get these metal longbeards done, and that would give me the core requirements for royal clans. It would reduce my amount of shooting in the list though. I'm not sure what else I would take in that list. I haven't really delved into it too deeply because I knew it wasn't much of an option for me yet. The engineers list I can take once I get these 2 gyrocopters done, because I'm building them so they are more like scout copters. So I could run these 2 as scouts, and they go in core as well, which is good. So I do want to run that list. I'm also going to paint some metal engineers so I can have some of the engineer sappers as well. So the engineering list will be on the table at some point. And then I've got a load of slayers as well, so I could run all the dwarf lists at some point in the future. Just got to get them painted. And then I'll find out that they're all terrible, probably. Also plans to get chaos on the table again, no doubt. There's all kinds of options I can pursue with them. And it's more of a dynamic game than with the dwarves, who are more static, obviously. But obviously they don't have the same quality of beards or butt cheeks that slayers, for instance, have. So that is something you lose if you're not playing dwarves. Okay, I think it's about time to wrap this one up. How long have we been going here? Let's have a look. 2 hours, 33 minutes, 40 seconds. That's quite lengthy. But I think these were very interesting games, actually. And let's see. Sindries says, joined midway, but immediately leaves a like because the tournament reports are always dope, smiley face. Well, that is correct. These videos are certainly dope, as the young people like to say. I can only assume that the young people also describe cool things as fly as well. I like to think that's cool still, without having to check with any young people to find out whether that slang is culturally relevant right now. I'll just assume it is. Okay. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description after liking and subscribing and all that good stuff as well. And don't forget, there's Twitter down there, there's Blue Sky, there's Facebook to keep up with everything. And why not attend an event yourself at the TSN Arena? I think you just Google it, it'll take you to the website where you get tickets. It's a nice venue. You get a good mix of veteran tournament players and new players at every event, generally. And very nice atmosphere, very friendly. In the heart of Nottingham, so quite easy to access. Heartily recommended. That's where pretty much all the tournaments I'm going to are located nowadays, because it's so close by, being near the centre of Nottingham myself. And the tickets also don't sell out quite as fast as Warhammer World. So with Warhammer World events, you have to be there ready as soon as the tickets go on sale, or you're not going. So That means if you're relying on Warhammer World for your events, it's just down to pure luck whether you actually get to play any Warhammer, and that's not good, is it? Also, if you think these tournament reports and all the battle reports are a valuable resource and they bring you joy and hope in these dark and uncertain times, why not pledge your entire life savings on the Patreon or the PayPal links down there as well, which will pay for more tournament tickets. That's where all my disposable income goes. Tournament tickets and more miniatures to use in those tournaments. And, oh, we've got someone building a second Cathay Sentinel. The Cathay Sentinels are a lot of fun, actually. Which flavour of Sentinels are you going for, though? That's the question. Because they're like 3 different colours of stone, aren't they? So I have always thought that rather than painting them all differently, you use some kind of light reactive paint, and then you have like LEDs on them that shine different lights depending on which one you're using it as, rather than having to paint 3 different ones and only use one at a time. You could get like 2 and then use them as whichever one fits in with the list you're playing, and that would be a cool way to do it. I have not seen anyone do it yet though, so there's some ideas for you. Since you're just building it, yeah, you can do that now, since you haven't painted it yet. There you go. Top tip. Okay, time to wrap this one up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We've had a nice, consistent viewer base for this one. So this must be a good day and time for live streaming tournament reports. I'll keep that in mind. I usually do them either the Sunday immediately after getting back from the event, or if I'm too tired, the Monday evening. And then battle reports are generally on the Friday evenings. I tend to play just regular practice games on Thursdays. Haven't done too many of those lately, but probably getting back into the swing of it now. There's a few weeks before the next tournament in the calendar, I think, so I'll try and get some more casual games in as well. And I believe all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.